Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
The podcast has a life of its own. Past.
The past.
The word is
has a-
past.
Right. Good poster.
Striking poster.
Where she's like,
yes.
right. She's
Yes.
sort of doing her
Looking
her
up.
ghosty pose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
Her
and,
in a dress.
and Danny Glover's beard is so good in this movie.
That's pretty good. I was sad when he shaves
When he-
it
right at the
off.
end.
It's a bummer. It's kind of the great tragedy of the film.
Right.
But I remember as a child when this movie came out, there was like a bookstore on the same block as my school that had the poster up for months leading up to when it came out, and probably months after it had left theaters.
Well, there's two posters. There's
Okay.
this sort of spooky teasery one where she's like,
Yes.
just the ghost.
And that just kind of looks like a horror film in terms of the
It
design of the
almost
poster.
looks like a horror film.
Yes.
Just straightforward. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And then there's the one that I can't find, but that is like my iTunes art.
Yes.
That's just like Oprah and
There's
Danny
an
Glover
embrace.
hugging.
Yes.
That seems like a movie with zero ghosts in it, and
Yes.
mostly just a movie about nice people hugging and
Right.
You know, is they learn to love each other or whatever.
That was the poster I walked by.
hell is this one?
She is. She's
There we
being
go.
spooky.
Yeah.
What's this one?
There's that one.
The embrace is the one that I always walked by.
Sure.
And the thing I realized watching this movie that is one of my absolute favorite looks.
Go ahead.
Person who still has color in their hair, but their beard is gray.
Sure. So right. Color on top,
You're Chris
gray in
Pines.
the beard. Yeah, Chris Pines.
Danny Glover in this. When Colbert had his beard phase, you know?
You're right.
I love that look.
What's that phenomenon?
I don't know. There's no
Why
name
does it
for
go
that.
gray down here first?
I don't know.
Okay.
But it's almost like a facial ombre. I know it's a natural occurrence, you know, but I like that shift in tones between the top and the bottom of the head.
It's pretty sexy.
I support it.
I think it's a hot look.
I think Danny Glover is a sexy guy.
Yeah.
I think he's a really handsome guy,
Yeah.
and he's so charming in this movie.
He is. He's in charming mode.
He is. I mean, that's part of, like, a big part
He's
of
in
this
kind of
character.
his sort of aw shucks kind of mode, right? You know, his sort of he's a gentle guy.
But there's something very...
He's good when he's scary too.
And also, I mean, very often he's annoyed,
Grumpy.
grumpy. It is that crazy thing where, like, he was, like, 37 in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, and he's too old for this shit.
Right.
Right.
He was so hot in that movie. I
Oh,
didn't
so hot.
expect
Really
him
is.
to be so hot because I only watched it for the first time like last year.
Yeah.
And I expected this like old, ugly man, and he's just like in the tub, and I'm just like, God damn.
He's looking great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, that's another thing about Dan Glover, one of our best bathtub actors. He's got a good tub scene in this,
It's
too.
true. He's got a tub scene in this.
But it speaks to that thing, like, your cultural understanding of the reputation of Lethal Weapon is he's too old for this shit. And then you watch the movie, and he is a pretty, in his prime, 37-year-old man who they put a little gray on.
Right.
So he looks like a fucking snack.
I mean,
He's at his physical peak.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now I want to find out, is he actually younger than Mel Gibson? But he can't be.
I think they were like,
No, he's 10 years older than Mel Gibson.
okay,
So he was older.
right,
He should have said, I'm older.
yes. I'm
He's
too much
older
older
for
than
this
you
shit.
for this shit. Yeah. No, because that and Color Purple are his two breakouts.
Correct.
And in both of them,
yeah.
he was playing older than he was.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
So he is one of those guys where it feels like, you're like, shouldn't Danny Glover have died 20 years ago?
Yes.
And then you're like, no, he's actually only like 70-something.
I think he's 73.
Yeah.
He's got a good 10 to 15 years left in him as
Yeah.
like grizzled character actor,
Right.
grandpa, you know, like you can just keep going to that well.
Loved him and Sorry to Bother You.
Loved him in Sorry
Great
Bobby.
Nat.
Loved him in what's it called? The Old Man and the Gun. Like
Yeah.
anytime he pops up, I'm happy to see him.
my favorite, Beyond the Lights.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he was
Excellent
in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then well, I mean, oh right, Last Black Man in San Francisco. He was in that. He's
Yeah.
actually
Oh, yes.
been in a lot of stuff recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Griff, we don't have to, but we are supposed to go to the next level tonight.
This is a great point.
The next level.
Well,
by the time this episode comes out,
this episode will come out, I think, in February.
it will have already won Best Picture. But David and I have been cordially invited to experience
to the next level.
to take it to the next level of Jumanji. It is in our court.
Right. It's him and it's Danny DeVito. Yeah.
And it's
two Dannies.
Kevin
the two
Hart-
old Dannies.
Kevin Hart playing Danny Glover, which in the trailer seems to be a very good impression.
Sure, right. He's worked on it.
And The
right.
Rock playing Danny DeVito, which seems to be from the trailer a very non-existent impression.
It's just him kind of going like, what? What are you talking about?
He's doing like a standard like improv show version of a New York accent.
Right.
He's like, hey, what are you talking about? Come on.
That is all true. We're going to go to the next level.
We're going to take it to the next
Maybe
level.
he's in it for 5 minutes. Maybe he's in it for, 2.5 hours. We don't know.
Yeah.
He was also in The Dead Don't Die. I believe with Caleb Landry Jones was his arc.
Oh.
Isn't he in the hardware store in that?
Did not see
I
it.
have not seen that.
Yeah.
How was it?
It's not. It's I don't know. It's not that great. But
But it
then
was-
maybe in 5 years, everyone will be like, "What are you talking about? We all slept on that masterpiece."
David, what are you talking about? It's the greatest cast of a zombie comedy ever disassembled.
Was that
One of the sweatiest taglines of all time.
from what I remember of the movie, which has already mostly sort of vanished?
Uh-huh.
He owns a hardware store.
Okay.
And he gets locked in it with Caleb Landry Jones, and there's like hijinks. They have some hijinks.
Oh, okay.
They're warding off zombies. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Caleb Landry Jones, that's the scary looking white man.
Like
Like the true like wraith, like
Yes.
like if there was like a white beloved, he could play it. Like where he just looks like a ghost visiting you.
I walked past him.
He has the very intense eyes.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
Yes.
I walked past him on the streets of LA a couple months ago,
Okay.
and he was scary looking.
scary.
He's one of those guys where you're like, maybe he turns it on for the camera, but he had menacing energy. I'm sure he's a very nice man.
Yeah.
He was much bigger than I thought he would be.
Okay.
Taller and kind of built. Like he
Okay.
was like fairly
Let's
broad-shouldered.
not forget he was Havoc Banshee.
Banshee.
Yes, he was. I remember that he was an X-Man.
Banshee and the X-Men. But it was one of those things where I like before I recognized that it was him, I was like, whoa, who is this? Is this guy gonna knife me? And then it was none other than Caleb Laundryback.
Right, Caleb Landry Jones.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's not in Beloved.
He's not in
As far as
Beloved.
I know.
No.
Although a lot of people are in Beloved.
A lot of people.
Like you're watching Beloved and you're like, oh, this person too. A lot of people
Yes.
pop up.
Yes.
There's some pop-ins. Irma P. Hall.
Yeah.
She pops in.
Yeah. And
Wes Bentley
uh-huh.
for 5 seconds.
Yeah. I thought about that a lot. Like this must have been one of his first films,
Wes Bentley.
right?
Let's find out.
Huh.
It's his first credit that you can click on in Wikipedia.
Oh
Wow.
my God.
He has 2 short films before then, I think. That's about it. So yes, his first film.
Yeah.
The balance of
And American Beauty the next year.
you Wes, it's your agent on the phone. I got great news. We got an offer. It's Jonathan Demme directing a Toni Morrison book, produced and starring Oprah. Oh my God, incredible. What's your role? It's wordless.
Sure.
You only appear in flashbacks doing the most horrific things imaginable.
Yes. In a movie filled with memories of horror.
Yeah, but especially because it's like wordless. It must have been so bizarre.
Okay,
to,
wait. So is he one of the guys that like takes her breast milk?
Correct.
Is that him?
Correct.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
the school
He's
teacher's
school
nephew.
teacher's nephew. Is
Okay.
his credit, yes. And then there's like one shot of his face just kind of staring after she kills her baby.
Yes.
That's about it. And that was when I was like, that's definitely Wes Bentley.
yes.
Right.
Kinda
Which is
striking
Wes
look.
Bentley's on-screen energy. Anytime he's like Interstellar or whatever, you're like,
You're like, oh, that's
looks like Wes Bentley over
Wes
here.
Bentley.
Right. Hunger Games.
Mission Impossible.
Right?
He's had a good little rebound run.
I guess so.
I mean, I don't know.
He was good in Mission Impossible. I liked him in Mission Impossible. He was in Pete's Dragon.
right.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Credit to him.
I
This
liked
is me
Pete's
kind of
Dragon.
like saluting Wes Bentley.
Pete's Dragon, directed by David Lowery, who will never come on the show
Friend of
again.
the show. Yes.
Never appear on the show again.
Was
anyway,
he on this show?
He was, and
He
he's
was.
coming back.
Not
or
sure.
never. Sorry.
never.
Oh, okay.
He was on this show.
He's definitely coming back.
He was on this show. And this show, of course, is Blank Check
Thank you.
with
Thank
Griffin and
David.
it's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion products they want. And sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce baby. And sometimes an even more powerful person who isn't a director hands over their check to you.
Sure. Right.
Because this is very much a blank check movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very much Jonathan Demme movie, but it is much more of an Oprah blank check than it is a Demme blank check.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say that. Sure.
She's throwing her
This was
influence
her
at
baby. This was the thing that she bought the rights to the script in 1987, the book to make the script. 1987.
Before it had won the Pulitzer.
Right.
I think right when it was
before-
published.
She
Right
got in
before.
early.
Yeah. And it took like 11 years to get it done.
And yeah, this was her first movie she had done since The Color Purple on screen. Is that true?
Yeah. Is that true?
I am almost certain. I will double check.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that was the big reputation, was like, oh my God, it's such a big deal. Oprah's making a movie again.
Yes, she had been in a couple of TV movies. Oh, I'm sorry. She's also in 1986's Native Son in a very small role. Yes, I think.
Oh,
yes.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
1986's Native Son. Also, she did this like television miniseries of a book, which I wrote a review on just this year and cannot remember.
Are you talking about There Are No Children Here? Is that the one? I'm trying to see what.
But from that time frame, from the 80s or the
The
90s?
Women of Brewster Place.
Oh yeah, where is that? Oh yeah, here. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Brewster Place
Yes, and
Wow.
and there was a Brewster Place TV show that was
Correct.
short-lived.
in the 90s,
Yeah.
and she played a character.
Is she playing an old lady in that one? That's an old lady.
The,
She
the
loves-
90s,
Wow.
man.
Yeah.
She loves playing an old woman.
She's very good at it.
She
Let's say.
is.
I feel like she is one of the more naturalistic playing an old person actors.
Yeah.
Janae and I were talking about this. She's a good actor.
I
Basically,
Very good
always.
actors.
I think that she's great. I've been watching I've been doing this piece on the decade in black film, which I'm saying it, even though hopefully it'll be published by the time this is out.
Sure. Yep.
And I watched I was watching The Butler, and then I watched this, and I was just like, she is hot in both of these movies. That's my take.
Good
She's
take.
pretty
Good
hot
take.
in The Butler.
She's running hot.
Yeah.
That's sort of you touch it and you're like, whoa.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
But like in the scene where she's meeting Paul D, again played by Danny Glover, and he like shows up in her yard and she's barefoot and they're looking at each other. I was like, this is a hot scene.
Yeah, that's true. And it is fun. Yeah, because we don't like Oprah on television, very maternal figure. People would come on and sort of talk to her about their feelings, their relationships, the hardships.
Right.
Yeah,
you know.
she's the person that Ellen comes out to.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was Ellen's therapist on the
Yes.
Ellen episode.
Yeah.
And one could also argue she is the one who like anointed Ellen the new king of daytime.
Sure,
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Right. Ellen sort of became the next Oprah.
Which I don't know if that was a good thing, but
Right.
it happens.
It's
It is
questionable.
it's what happened.
But there was that thing.
I never watched the Ellen show. Obviously, I mean, I don't watch the
You don't
Ellen
watch
show.
it every day?
I mean, I don't have cable TV anymore. I guess I could watch it if I really, but I will occasionally find myself watching a clip from the Ellen
Same
show.
here.
And she's very salty. Like she's got a real edge to her on
Yeah.
air.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
does.
I know she has there's an unspoken sort of thing that she's got a salty edge off air too, or whatever.
Yeah.
There are just you see chatter on the internet sometimes.
She's still got that stand-up defense mechanism. I got to cut you before you cut me.
Sure, right.
That very specific like product of the 80s stand-up club scene.
100%. And I know
Yeah.
she like hangs out with George Bush and says we should all be nice people, and people get mad at her, and that's a
But
it's a
David,
great
we
conversation. to
all
have.
do that. We all hang out with George Bush. It's a thing we all do.
I mean, I love the video with her and
Dakota Johnson.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
I was gonna say Melanie Griffith's daughter, which is
Correct.
such an old lady way to describe her.
But I mean, that is one of the better films of 2019, right?
It's a thrilling exchange.
It's so
It's a white
good.
knuckle ride.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful. I just can't. I could not imagine going on somebody's show and just being like, "Oh, you didn't invite me to your party." Like I run into people who didn't invite me to their party all the time,
Right,
and
you're
I'm
not
just
gonna
like,
be like,
I'm not
"Well."
gonna mention it.
But you know, 100% the reason Dakota Johnson did that is because it wasn't just that she didn't show up to the party. It was that she went and hung out with George Bush instead of going to the party.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Right.
When people
but I think
triangulated,
also-
wait a second, let's look at the dates.
As you're saying,
Yeah.
as Melanie Griffith and Don Johnson's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
she probably just has a kind of like, what are you gonna do? Energy, right? Where it's like, I
Right.
can say what I want
You
on
can't
Ellen.
touch me.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been in this shit my whole life, right?
I completed the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy.
She
Oh.
was.
Wait.
I loved her.
Me too. She's great.
It's pretty good.
Wait, they finished the film?
They made them.
They finished
Yeah,
them. They
yeah.
released them. They
All
were
three.
made film. They
I
made
have
money.
seen all 3 of them.
I have to say that I'm impressed that anybody managed to get through all 3
They
books.
did it. They did it.
I got so bored.
Did you read any of the books?
I read the first one and tried to read the second one.
I mean, the
and
first
I was
one
so
is
bored.
The first one is terrible. So I feel like it only goes out from there. But 50 Shades Darker, the movie, 100% wonderful time in the theater.
I believe that is the second movie, right?
Yes.
Which is the least plotty. That's the
It's-
one where it's just a lot
it's-
of crazy stuff.
It's also the one where there's a Chronicles of Riddick poster in the
Yes,
background
right.
of
And I
the
remember
scene.
that.
That was an amazing time at the movies. Like, we were all just like audibly saying, "Is that Chronicles of Riddick?" I felt very close to everyone in the movie theater.
part of the
that
Riddick
night.
verse.
Now you host a podcast.
I do, yeah.
Our guest Jourdain.
Oh, Jourdain Searles. Yes.
Jourdain
I'm sorry, we
Searles.
didn't introduce
Yes.
you. Hi.
You host a podcast called Bad Romance. That is
Yes.
bad romances in movies.
Yes.
What is your view of 50 Shades of Grey as a phenomenon, as a thing, especially as a cinematic adaptation? Because I only saw the first one. I made a very snap judgment. And in the last couple of months, I've actually been rethinking their place in culture a little bit.
I mean, the first one is very much like it was Sam Taylor Johnson, I
Correct.
believe, and she didn't really get along with E.L. James.
Right.
And the way that she made the movie was kind of like she almost made the movie in a way where it's like she didn't like the book, and it was
Right.
really clear that it was made by
Right.
somebody who didn't like the book.
Yes.
So when they switched directors to 50 Shades
James
Dark,
Foley, I believe, did the
Yeah.
other two. Right.
yeah, so the first one is like kind of like a criticism of the first book,
Mhm.
but
Right.
it's a weird criticism because it still has to move through all of the plot conventions of it. It should doesn't really work as a criticism and also doesn't really work for the book either. It's really weird, but the other two are just like exactly what those books were meant to be, which is just
Crazy thrillers
Just-
with spanking and helicopters.
and also just like power,
Yeah.
just like this fantasy. Like I love the way that Dakota Johnson gets in the last two, where she just like becomes more and more confident and more just like this wealth belongs to me. She gets so into it. Like,
Ellen must attend my party.
and in the third one especially, there's like a woman that's like who's designing their house, and it's an architect designing their house, and the woman like talks to Christian and doesn't talk to her and kind of just like treats her like a trophy wife or whatever, and then
Sure.
Dakota like pulls her to the side and, "Excuse me, my name is Mrs. Gray and you need to
Oh,
back up
wow.
off my husband." And I'm just like, all right.
Do they get
Also-
married in 2 or 3?
I don't think.
I think they get married in 3.
Yes. No.
Okay.
Apparently, they get married at the end of 2.
Yeah.
3 begins
Honeymoon.
with their honeymoon.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
Rita Ora, of course, is in all 3. Which
Yes.
must be
Rita Ora
acknowledged.
and those movies just looking for
As-
the plot, looking for some kind of thread.
She plays his sister?
She's his
Where is
sister.
she? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Kim Basinger, I believe, is in the final 2. As
Right, and she plays the
evil,
woman-
taker of his virginity.
Marcia
Right.
Gay Harden plays the mom.
Hell yes.
In a very
That's right.
strange performance. See, I only saw the first one, and my takeaway was I hate this book, which it's interesting that that's your explanation of the first movie, because I did not read the book, but watching the movie made me hate the book. Because
Yeah.
it feels like the movie is trying to make you hate the book.
Oh yeah. No, definitely.
Right.
That's why E.L. James got her fired.
Right.
Kind of sneering.
And
at
the thing
book.
I found
Right,
fascinating
right.
about the movie while not liking it was that it felt like a filmmaker trying to sort of do what Coppola did with The Godfather. Which
Sure,
is
where
like,
he's like, this is junk, but
it's pulp.
yeah.
I want to use this like pop culture phenomenon to like Trojan horse and a bunch of things I'm interested in around this theme.
Right.
But we live in an era now where the writer of the book gets complete approval over every fucking prop and every element of set dressing.
Right.
And E.L. James apparently just didn't let her do anything.
I mean, the ending is still one of the funniest endings ever because he just like gives her like a few spankings like with his hand, and she's just like, "No, I
Right.
can't handle
Right.
this."
That's the first movie. Just ends with he spanks her one time, and she's like, "I'm out." And
She
I'm like,
gets
this
in
is
an
the end
elevator.
of the film.
the end of the movie, she gets in an elevator and says, "I'm done," and the
Right.
doors close.
And then like the movie literally basically is like, check in next year for part 2. Like it's not like the movie is like, and that's that.
But the other crazy
know
thing
there's
is
more.
that scene has happened 10 times over the course of the
been
film
some-
you've just watched.
Yeah.
No, it's a weird thing because a lot of people I know got really upset about it because of its like wrong portrayal of BDSM. But the thing about the
Right.
books is
It's
that
treating his
they're
kink
not.
as an illness.
They're
Right.
not
Yes.
about BDSM.
Right,
They're just
right,
like
right.
about this guy who does not know how to love a woman
Right.
without
Can you
it.
change a
Yeah.
man?
And once they're like settled and married, they don't even really do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
It becomes about all this other shit.
Yeah.
And him having helicopters and Kim Basinger.
So
and,
it just like seems like
Rita Ora.
it just seems like it was written by a person that like hasn't had any interesting sex and it shows, and I just don't.
I think she has new books.
I'm sure she does. I mean, it must be easy when you don't really edit.
Right.
So can I just say congratulations to the fan fiction community for their accomplishment
It
in
is
50 Shades of Grey.
pretty incredible.
The
No,
Mister.
It's
The Mister.
I
That's what it's called.
I
book's
was
called The
listening to the Mister on on audiobook and I just could not.
Who does the audiobook? Does she do it?
No, it's
No,
like
it's
just like
two
actors, but the
actors.
Mister is
What's the
512 pages, which is close to double the length of Beloved.
I truly
Right.
yeah.
Beloved's like 320?
Yeah, maybe 350, something
Yeah.
like that.
Beloved is like a nice, like not too long of a book, but every couple pages is just like full of so much emotion
Her
and
language can be
imagery
very
and
dense.
trauma
Yeah,
and like even like when I was reading The Bluest Eye, which is probably like her shortest book, it still took me a really long time just because like every page, like I had to put it down and I had to be like, okay, I need to think about what I just read and then pick up the book again.
The problem with, as this is the problem with so many great American authors, is that her books are often foisted on, kids in high
Yeah.
school, and they're tough. They're challenging reads. They're, something, as you say, you sometimes need to sit with, or you need to be sort of like held, guided through.
Yeah.
And so kids think of her as this like broccoli author, like, I had to read,
okay.
No, but she's
Song of Solomon.
so good.
She's so good.
And I was gonna say, I don't know if it's just my weird taste or whatever, but I was a kid who, despite liking words and books,
Yeah.
was so anti-school
Sure.
that I usually resented any book I was assigned.
Right.
And I remember Song of Solomon being like one of the books in high school where I was like, I enjoy reading this.
Right.
I am reading this for pleasure. I am reading this out of enthusiasm.
Page turner.
Right. That was like one of the ones that gripped me and that stood out after high school where I didn't throw away my copy,
Throw away your copy.
Burn it.
You're burning books.
I burn any book I don't like.
Right.
But I never read Beloved. I bought it 5 days ago because I was like, I should probably read it before the show, and then made it 10 pages in and was like, I'm not going to finish this in 5 days.
You were trying to read Beloved, just like
No.
I'm a pretty fast reader.
Sure, no,
I had not read
but
Song of Solomon
it's
in
not-
16 years.
It's very tough to like sort of try and skim read her book.
Exactly. I
because it's so
forgot.
dense,
I forgot how dense her
I
language
haven't
is.
read a Morrison book,
But it was one of those things where I was like, I'm not going to speed read this for the sake of saying I read it before the
No, sure,
podcast.
sure.
I will put it on my shelf and read it in full.
I kind of feel like this kind of story would probably be best either for a mini series or a very like liberal adaptation that
Sure.
kind of like goes through, kind of more of the emotional beats than not necessarily like all of the story beats.
because it does. I think you've probably read the book more recently than I, but like the movie is trying to just get it all in there.
Yeah, and I
Which
don't
is-
really think that it works, especially
Right.
in scenes where, like, okay, so we're in a scene and then we kind of see a flashback where we're not fully in the flashback.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting like a preview of it.
Yeah, the opening of this movie is very aggressive. and-
Yes.
yes. Anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, and so it just seems like it's like it doesn't seem like Demme really understood what to do with the backstory.
Sure.
And so it just kind of like feels jarring and kind of like takes the poetry out of it a lot of the time. And it's also, I mean, I get this a lot. I feel this a lot with like men, like directors portraying anything having to do with slavery. But it's just like it's such a weird version of it that doesn't really take its time to really like get into the emotions of the situation. And the emotions is what the root of this story is. It's about, the trauma of slavery and like how it continues to stick with you.
Right. Haunt.
Yeah, and so it's like you can't just like show us like a flashback and be like, we got it. Like,
Yeah.
I think the flashbacks are the roughest. Right. I agree with you. Like the sort of roughest portion of this movie. It's not a bad movie. There are things about it
It's
I
an
like.
odd duck
but
of a
it's
film,
an
though.
odd thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Had you ever seen it before, Griffin?
I had never seen it before. Had either of you seen it before?
Yeah, I watched it like as a kid, and I was
Okay.
just like,
I
this
saw
is
it in, like,
weird
high
and bad. But I saw it again.
Did you see it like when you were reading the book?
Yeah.
Uh,
I saw it in high school when I was reading.
No, I didn't read the book until I was an adult. So
Oh, interesting. So you had seen the movie first,
yeah,
and then you read the book fairly recently.
I don't
Yeah.
know how. Yeah, I don't know how this movie. It's crazy to think about this movie just coming out
Yeah.
anyway, because yeah, but
this is the kind of thing that needs kind of like a rollout, like
Yes.
kind of like a Barry Jenkins, like I'm about to ease you into this giant
Right.
thing.
right. It feels like a crazy thing for people to have just been like, beloved. I don't know what is it.
Let's go.
It's like a
let's all-
period ghost movie.
Let's all go watch
and
it.
like just sitting down and watching this movie and like, you know, how do you? It's a tough movie to unpack.
And it was like, I feel like its main selling point was, oh, anytime Oprah picks a book, people go gaga for it. This is the greatest Oprah's book club of all time. Oprah herself
Right.
is making the movie and putting herself in it, her big return as a film actress.
Right.
Like the Oprah endorsement stamp is the whole thing. But it is this strange film that it's like an $80 million Disney financed.
Yes, it's a Disney film.
The only adaptation of like one of the
$80
most
million
canonical,
is a crazy amount of
crazy
money.
amount of money.
And this movie doesn't look like it cost $80 million.
no, it does not.
It looks
Most of it takes place in
fine.
the house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a wild, it's a big,
yeah.
big budget.
And the fact that this is the only Toni Morrison,
The only
Only Toni
It's the only time
Morrison
she approved it.
adaptation.
This
Yeah.
is.
Is that part of it? Has she just mostly not sold the
Yeah.
rights to her books?
I think that's the case.
Because obviously Oprah optioned this book.
Yeah.
Apparently wrote her a personal check for $1 million, which I'd love it if Oprah wrote me a personal check for $1 million.
Yeah, and even after this
Very
movie,
nice.
I'm pretty sure Toni Morrison was like was at peace with the movie, which I don't know how much of that is just like I like my friend Oprah, or how much of it is this
Right.
this actually works for the material.
I wonder which, right. I mean, I think authors are usually pretty judicious about like not getting too mad unless they decide to go hard and be like, no, it sucked, right? Like do a Stephen King and
Yeah.
The Shining Star.
Sure.
Example. But yeah, she was polite about the movie as far as in it publicly, right? And
Yeah, she was.
And this also feels like a movie that
I
is
don't think go ahead.
two very skilled, very powerful people trying their earnest hardest to do right by the book. They're not taking any radical
Yes.
swings at changing it, right?
No.
Right.
So that probably in and of itself pleased her, and the fact that like Oprah spent 11 years trying to get it right, you know?
Yeah. It ending up with Demme is such an interesting. Like I've watched.
This is the thing I've been trying to figure out.
This is because, like, you know, my favorite Demme movies are like Something Wild, Married to the Mob, like more that kind of stuff. Rachel getting married, and so him doing this. There's just really nothing in like his oeuvre that points to this for me.
In a way, and then when I started watching it, I kind of understood where, because Oprah was the one who just said, Demi's who I want, right? She offers it to him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was trying to figure this out because this movie gestated for 10 years.
Yes. It was
and
very much
I have
Oprah's
to assume
choice.
past. I'm surely other directors had maybe been involved at some point if it was sort of gestating. For
But I
this long.
feel like the big thing was her constantly hiring new writers to try to adapt it.
Sure.
I mean, I might be wrong in this, and I was digging in to try to find history, but it seemed like so much of the stop and start was obviously Oprah had a day job that was pretty time consuming.
Right.
And she didn't want to get the movie off the ground, even try to get it off the ground until she felt like the adaptation was right.
Right.
And like Richard LaGravenese wrote on it.
Yes. Adam Brooks. Yes.
Yes.
Rewrite guys. There is a coffee table book called Journey to Beloved in which she describes the process of making Beloved by
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey. I have not read it.
But I know,
I'm
I
just
feel like
alerting
so
you
much
to
now I
its
wanna read
existence.
it.
Yeah.
so much of, even at the time when people were like, why is a white man directing this film?
Sure.
Oprah was constantly saying like, this is who I chose. This is who I wanted. I felt like he was the best person to do it.
Obviously, at the time, he is a very major director. He had made 2 films that decade.
That's what's so
The
weird about
Silence of
this.
the Lambs, obviously,
This
was
is 1998.
huge hit, and Philadelphia
It's
was
his first film since Philadelphia,
yes.
6 years earlier. He's made a lot of documentaries in between. But this is his first
correct.
fiction film in 6 years. His 2 previous films were major Oscar players.
Yes.
So to a certain degree, this is his weird 90s trilogy of like Oscar-y films.
That's true.
Like the serious, prestige Jonathan Demme.
Right.
Except all 3 of these films are very strange
very different
and
from
do
each
not
other.
play as conventional Oscar-y movies. So I think to her mind, he seemed like one of the big serious guys. And to another point, to a certain degree, watching this, especially the first 30 minutes, which leans so much more into the horror of everything, you kind of see why she would want to hire the Silence of the Lambs guy to make this movie. Ding dong.
Hello.
Let me get the door.
Okay.
Oh, hello, 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 hello. Unique New York, unique New York.
Hello.
Unique New York.
Hello.
Kevin Kline, Academy Award winner Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline.
Okay.
Academy Award winning actor. Don't you recognize my voice, my very clean diction?
Yes, absolutely.
Theatrical
It's
yet
nice,
grounded.
Nice
Kevin
to
Kline.
meet you.
Thank you very
Academy
much.
Award winner, as
Thank
you say.
you very much.
But what are you in the studio for?
You know, I'm a very high thread count man. I'm an elegant man.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I'm sort of the satin bed sheets of the drama.
That's the bit. Okay, sure. Yeah. You're an elegant guy.
What do you mean the bit? I'm coming here for help. I've listened to your show. I'm a big fan.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. I can't believe you're a big fan of my show. Wow, incredible.
Well, you're very welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Unique New York. Red leather, yellow leather. Now, the point is, sometimes I have heard that people come into this studio and they have a problem and you guys are able to fix it.
Okay, what's your problem?
I'm a high thread count man and I can't find sheets that are up to my level.
All right. Well, that's fair because you spend a third of your life in sheets.
Of course I do.
And you want them to be insanely comfortable.
Unique New York.
So,
very good diction.
so you should go to the internet. You've heard of it.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Brooklinen has over 50,000 five-star reviews
Brew-
and counting.
Wait, you're talking about Brew Klein and?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, that's what this is?
What do you mean?
Oh.
Am I mispronouncing that word? Brew Kleinen?
I suppose
Kevin Kline, would love to
put
order
it
sheets from
together,
Brew Kleinen.
But the word Brooklinen has Klein within it.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that.
You're
Well,
right.
that sounds like something that someone who has spent over 2 years searching for something funny within the word Brooklyn would desperately grasp onto, doesn't it?
Well, let me tell you, it's a company that was founded in 2014 by husband and wife team Vicky and Rich Fulop.
I love married couples.
They wanted to find beautiful home essentials that didn't cost an arm and a leg with a mission to make you comfortable.
And where are they based out of?
Brooklyn.
Unique New York.
It's a DTC bedding company. They work directly with the manufacturers and directly with the customers. There's no middlemen. So that means that you're getting very high quality products for good prices. They got towels now.
Oh, they have towels.
Shower curtains. Bath
Shower
mats.
curtains, bath
They
mats.
even have ultra soft loungewear.
Loungewear.
And you are the loungewear of American actors.
I am. If you've ever seen the film No Strings Attached,
Sure, one time, yeah.
which I believe I play Ashton Kutcher's father.
Sounds right.
I wear sweatpants in that, or I might be confusing that with Definitely Maybe,
That's another one. That's Ryan
where I
Reynolds.
play a similar role. Very good in both of those films, if I can say so myself.
Usually good.
I thank you. I hold myself to a very high standard, much like Brooklinen holds their products to a very high standard.
You're also responsible for my favorite ever clickhole. Hear what celebrities have to say. Which I Googled and brought up.
Well, I find that quite humorous. It is a picture of my face, Academy Award-winning actor Kevin Kline, and
The quote is, "My velvets."
and then it is attributed to Kevin Kline on the safe return of his velvets. I find that very funny. I'm a humorous man. I mean, I won an Oscar for doing comedy. Very few people win Oscars
Well,
for comedy.
listen, you can add some nice sheets to your velvets.
Oh, wonderful.
If you like softness and comfort and you need some essentials to help you relax, Brooklinen has it all. So just go to brooklinen.com. It's the perfect place to hit refresh in the new year.
And, it just sounds like they're such a good product that it's almost like it's hard coming up with new ways to say how great they are.
Sure.
You know?
It's so confident, Brooklinen is so confident in their product
Right.
that all their sheets, comforters, and loungewear and towels come with a lifetime warranty.
Right.
And you can get 10% off your first order and free shipping on all new sheets when you use the promo code CHECK. That's only at brooklinen.com, BROOKLINEN.com.
Brooklinen. And what I was trying to say is that if this feels like a sweaty excuse for me to be here, it is no commentary on the product. It is more a commentary
I
on.
love Brooklinen. I own so much Brooklinen.
I do too.
I have the loungewear.
Brooklinen.
It's fabulous. Brooklinen, everything you need to live your most comfortable life. It's a promo code CHECK at brooklinen.com.
Unique New York.
There's stuff like in the beginning of the red light.
I love the red light.
Oh yeah, no, that's great.
That's an incredible little moment. Yes.
And a lot of the early stuff with Danny Glover is really good, and his chemistry with Oprah is really good,
Yeah.
which is probably why he picked her. Even though, like, in terms of the book, Danny Glover is actually a really weird choice, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, maybe it's just like a black thing, but like the way that Paul D is described in the book, like part of the reason why women love him so much is because he's very, very like light skinned and kind of like a Michael Ealy kind of
Right,
looking
sure.
person.
He's more pretty.
Right,
Whereas
he's
Danny Glover
pretty.
is like sort of a big, broad guy.
Yeah.
Right.
The
So
huskiest
He's more
voice in
fatherly.
history.
Like he
Yeah.
is
Right.
more like someone you'd sort
Yeah.
of take you into his embrace.
Right. So it was interesting. Like it makes Paul D come off differently than he does in the book, because in the book he just kind of reminds me of somebody that would wear a zoot suit if zoot suits had been created at the time.
Right.
Because in this, it feels like he's just a charisma guy. Not that
Right,
he's
yeah.
not good looking, but the whole power of this guy is there's something about him. He's so engaging.
His
he's
eyes
magnetic.
are what's really sexy about him.
Oh, his eyes are unbelievable. in this
Yeah.
movie. He's kind of got like Disney cartoon animal eyes.
He does.
Like his eyes are just so round.
Right.
You know?
You can just see so much of the emotion in his
Yes.
face.
Yes.
Yeah. So I
Yes.
mean, like he's up for the job, but that's an interesting thing. It's especially interesting when his interactions with like Denver, played by Kimberly Elise, who I think is really good in this
She's
movie.
terrific. And I
She's
remember
really
at the
great.
time the narrative being a little bit like,
She was kind of the breakout.
here's like a
in
major
theory.
new
Yeah.
star. Right. We're going to have Kimberly Elise.
I'm kind of upset that she didn't really break out. Like a lot of the roles that she's had just
she
like
had been in Set It Off already.
The year
right.
before?
and she's
2
so
years
great
before.
in Set It Off.
She's
Right.
Great movie.
I want to talk about her for a second because I think
She
this
didn't
is
make a
an
lot
interesting
of movies.
career arc.
And I think partly maybe because it's, literally, especially at the time, just tough to get good vehicles as
I
like
mean,
a young black
I-
actress.
I mean, as I've been doing this this research on the black films of the decade and why more black films are nominated for Oscars and everything, part of it is that like there really weren't a lot of roles for black women during that time. Like aside from like in 2000s, you kind of got some rom-coms and things, but mostly in the 90s, it was like Waiting to Exhale, Set It Off, whatever side role in like Juice or Menace to Society
Yes,
or
right.
Boys
But those
in the
are
Hood.
like small roles, right?
Right. And then there's just
It's
like
just
the
like
stuff.
yelling at someone.
Right. And then there's stuff on the fringes, like Just Another Girl in the IRT and The Watermelon Woman that people didn't even really talk about until
Indie movies.
While, yeah.
Just
and
Another
so,
Girl in the IRT is so good.
Yeah, it is. And so I feel like there just wasn't really anything. And then like it wasn't until really like Tyler Perry with Diary of a Mad Black Woman, I think in 2004.
She's what she's
2005.
in. Right.
She's really
She's
good.
the
in
lead
it.
in
star.
it, isn't she? Right. So
Yeah.
she's the titular.
She's the
character.
mad black
She's the
woman.
mad black woman.
Yeah, she's really great. Yeah, it's a weird thing where I feel like there can only be, she has a certain look where there can be only so many of her at once. And I also think that a lot of her thunder was stolen by Thandie Newton, which is really funny considering
That's
that I
interesting
kind of think that Kimberly Elise is the better actress.
It's interesting. I mean, and Thandie Newton does pretty quickly go from this to, booking your Mission Impossible 2s and your sort of big role.
Well,
big
right.
Hollywood role.
They sort of chose her to be the next one, but then we talk about in our following
She had a weird career arc.
episode,
Right. We talked about it
yes.
in the Truth About Charlie episode, right? where
that she ends up coming back around to being sort of a character actress, which is her better zone.
Yeah.
And you watch like the degree to which he like digs into this character,
Right.
which is not a part that most ingenues would want to take, which speaks to the fact that I don't think she thought about positioning herself as an ingenue, which Hollywood then did.
Right.
The Kimberly Elise thing, which I think is fascinating, is that like Set It Off is such a breakout.
Yeah.
Then this is presumed to be this big Oscar player.
Yes.
She's the only one who kind of gets traction off of this. She gets like a Critics Award.
She gets a couple Critics Awards. Yeah.
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 And people thought, and then the movie just didn't really connect.
Right.
And then she's kind of in like a nether space for like a
She's
couple of
in
years.
Bait. She's in John Q. She's
Right.
in, I think these are sort of thankless like
Yeah.
wife roles,
Yeah.
things
Right.
like that.
But then her revival weirdly is, and to some degree, she was too early on this. It's Diary of a Mad Black Woman and Woman Thou Art Loosed,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
are the first two like big Christian movies to cross over into the mainstream.
and like inspirational sort of like
yeah.
it's she
And
in
she's
both,
great in both of
yeah,
them.
she's playing people who are like in bad relationships and
Yeah.
dealing with toxic things, and they're like overcoming
But she
them.
kind of like anointed that new genre, at least in terms of like being a crossover success, where those two movies were like actual mainstream box office performers.
Yeah.
Whereas like faith-based films had not performed that way before.
But it speaks to like, so this was the first poster for Diary of a Mad Black
Yes.
Woman, right? Where it's like,
A
it's
woman
her head and she's
turning
a flower.
into a flower. Yes.
If you remember, like she's sort of.
Yes, I remember that.
And that
one.
was the sort of, those initial Tyler Perry movies always had that more impressionistic
there
poster.
would be two different
Yeah.
takes.
And
There'd
then
be the
there
comedy
was-
poster and the
As the movie
spiritual
was going
poster.
crazy, like, right, there was the Medea who has a gun.
Pointing a gun
poster.
at the
Right.
title.
And then
Yeah.
as the Tyler Perry verse sort of went on, it was they would more just usually just be like wacky posters with a lot of big
Medea became a
actors on it.
franchise. But they were pretty smart in terms of understanding. I mean, that is the juxtaposition of all Tyler Perry movies, is you have very broad comedy and these like
And then
very
it's like-
sort of like
I
character-driven
do love the
melodramas.
flower posters though.
Oh yeah, no, the flower posters, fantastic. I think there's one for Daddy's Little Girls. There's a flower
yeah,
one.
that's
maybe.
I've got to find that poster.
Yes. That's legitimately good. Idris Elba,
That is one of
Gabrielle
my favorite
Union,
ones.
so good in that.
I have not seen every Tyler Perry movie,
but
but I
yeah,
have seen that one.
I think in general, when it comes to black actors and specifically black women, you kind of have to hitch your wagon to Lee Daniels, Tyler Perry,
Yeah.
Oprah, or I guess Ava soon is kind of like, and
Right.
I
There's
think
Daddy, a lot of flowers.
yeah.
Yep.
And they and she just didn't it's weird. She was there at the ground floor, and it's like we moved into the later 2000s and she
Yeah.
just got forgotten.
That's what's interesting is I feel like she was this like trailblazer in terms of like I think to do a faith-based film was not seen as a good career move for a legitimate actress at that point in time.
Yeah.
Right.
And she does the two that break out, and then suddenly everyone realizes, oh, let's
I gotta
jump
get
in the
in on
water.
this. Right.
And she kind of gets pushed out of it.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting because there are so many, like Viola Davis was in Medea Goes to
Yeah,
Jail.
right.
Like there's so many, Gabrielle Union's in there.
And Taraji P. Henson talks about like
Taraji's in multiple
like
ones, I think.
she had gotten the Oscar nomination and no one was giving her lead parts. And she was like, Tyler Perry was the only person who would give me a lead role, who raised my quote, in
Yeah.
Hollywood. And then I suddenly was viewed as a leading lady. And like it became this like clear career path for everyone to do. It became the equivalent, I feel like, for black actors of like white pretty actors doing a Sundance indie to be like, wait, I can actually act.
Right, give me an Oscar.
Right.
It became a thing to like show your sort of bona fides.
Gotta give you the next 3 thankless wife roles that Kimberly Elise was
Oh my-
handed
okay.
post Diary of a Mad
Okay,
Black
when
Woman.
she
Yeah.
should
All
have
in
had
like
Heat again.
inspirational,
Yes. Okay.
biopic, like true story film.
Because those two movies, she is the lead.
She
She's the
is.
titular character.
She's also in The Manchurian Candidate.
Right.
The supporting role.
Yeah.
Pride, which if you don't remember,
Bernie
the Terrence,
Mac and Terrence Howard swimming,
Yes, that
the
one.
swimming movie,
a swimming drama. Yeah,
in which I think she plays like the wife.
I would imagine.
Then The Great Debaters, the Denzel Washington
Uh-huh.
movie, in which I think she plays a mom, maybe
Sure.
something like that.
Mm.
And then, and this is the one I did not remember, she played Ben Carson's wife in Gifted Hands, the Ben Carson story,
my
the TV movie where Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Ben Carson.
Ah.
Now
Wow.
Secretary of Housing,
Yes.
Ben Carson.
wow.
And now I'm trying to think. I think I saw her in something recently and I was shocked. I think it was Ad Astra.
yes,
Yes,
yeah, she's in that Astra.
She dies in Ad Astra.
She's one of the nice people on the ship on
Yeah.
the night where they're like, it's really great to have you on board, Brad Pitt. And he's like, happy to be here.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, they're all dead.
Is that
Because
the
he doesn't know how to talk to anybody.
is that the baboon ship?
No.
No.
She's on the ship that takes them, that docks with the baboons.
Yeah, where
Right,
he has
okay,
a whole
okay,
crew and the
yes.
entire crew
And
dies.
then he has
Yes.
to like commandeer it, and by the end of it, they're all dead.
Right.
And it's just because his daddy never taught him how to fucking communicate.
Oh my god, that movie is so.
Love Kimberly Elise.
No, yeah, I love her. Like oh my god, like I am nobody, but I would love to just like write a screenplay and just be like, can I just get this in her hands? Can we give her
But you know
something
what the
to
crazy
do?
thing is? I mean, you say you're nobody, which is not true. You're a very respected writer, but I feel like very often people like that, where you're like, this actor's so good, no one writes good parts for them. I wish I could write something for them. It could never get through to them. A, it's easier to get through to them than you think. And B, they are so excited that someone's writing a part for them that they would do it. You know? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like Ryan Coogler talks about that with Michael B. Jordan, where like he wrote Fruitvale Station and he was like, man, I'd love to like get this guy, but I assume he's like inundated with offers. And he sent the script to Michael B. Jordan, and Michael B. Jordan was like, no one has ever offered me a lead role before.
Right.
I've been acting since I was 11.
Yeah, on The Wire. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, I never, and Coogler was like, I assumed you were just choosy and turned down stuff. And he's like, no one was ever
Get
letting
outta
me be
here,
a lead.
right.
No one even threw it by me as an option.
Well,
Yeah.
let's get Kimberly Elise back in movies.
Let's do that. I mean, and I guess Thandie Newton, we should probably talk about her.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about her. Thandie Newton, of course,
She-
British.
She's an actress who I mentioned this before we started recording, but my relationship with her was just that like I was convinced she was bad
Right.
for such a long time. Like I would watch her in a bunch
Yeah.
of things and she was bad in them. And then I watched Westworld, which she's great
So
in.
fucking good in Westworld.
And I'm just like, okay, well then what's been going on all this time?
So I'd want to talk about Thandie Newton.
Yeah.
A British
Yeah.
actress, as I said. I believe her mom was a Zimbabwean princess. Her dad is like a lab tech,
Uh-huh.
born in London. Her name means beloved. It's all over the
That's
IMDb
crazy.
trivia page.
Wow.
And the first thing I feel like the first things that I knew her in, I guess she's in Into the Vampire. I don't remember her in that.
She is. She's one of the maids in
Okay.
when they're in the mansion. I think she gets killed. They suck her blood.
It's been a while since I saw that one.
Yeah,
and then
she's
she
like the
played-
only black person in it.
and racist. Then she's in Jefferson in Paris, playing Sally Hemings.
Okay.
That movie is insane.
I have never seen it.
I
It's a
have.
Merchant Ivory movie. It was a
It's
big movie.
so
Nick Nolte
weird.
is Thomas Jefferson.
It's
Weird.
Like, it's
Yeah.
like it's like a love triangle between Nick Nolte, Thandie Newton, and I believe Gwyneth Paltrow.
I think it's
Jeez.
Greta Skaki, or however you say her
Yeah.
name. But let's find out.
It's
No, it's Gwyneth Paltrow.
It is.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
and I just remember being
Greta
like,
Skaki is in it, but not yeah.
I just remember thinking, oh, whose idea with this? And also just like, why is it a romance? Why is the Sally Hemings story a romance?
Right.
That's not
the
how
poster
it went.
is very much yes. Here, like it looks like I'm gonna find you the poster because I really like it. You see Thandie Newton like listening in on the other side of the door,
So
being
bizarre.
like, sort of like, what's going on?
Jeez.
This was a
That
movie.
movie.
It was like an
Yes.
Oscar-y play, but it was a bomb.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so she was in that she's on the poster. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a big film.
Yeah.
And then after that, she's in Gridlocked,
Uh-huh.
which is a good movie.
Yeah.
But she's kind of really big in it in my memory, like sort of really over the top.
She can
which
be
she can sometimes
very
be.
theatrical,
Yes,
which sometimes suits the material very well and
then
sometimes does
she
not.
overdoses in the movie very quickly, I believe, because that's sort of part of the plot. It's
Uh-huh.
a good movie. I like that movie.
Yeah.
And then she's in this, Beloved.
Okay.
And then right after this, Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
And then Truth About Charlie,
Uh-huh.
Chronicles of Riddick,
Uh-huh.
and then and she also had a big arc on ER
Okay.
as Noah Wiley's wife.
Yeah.
He meets her when he's like doing good in Africa, and they have a whole up and down. She was on ER a lot.
Oh, interesting.
She has like a
Never
stillbirth.
watched that show.
There's all kinds
David's
of.
favorite show.
Anytime I love ER. Anytime she showed up in ER, you'd be like, "Fuck," because it was like always the most depressing storylines.
Yeah.
like she was just there for like the show to be sad and for Noah Wiley to cry and for her to cry.
ER was like the one TV show my mom watched. My mom was fairly anti-TV
Right.
without throwing the TV out the window and banning TV from our homes.
Right.
And that was the one show she watched. So it was a big deal. And every so often I would go see a movie with my mom and an actor would come on screen. She'd go, ugh. And I'd go, what? And she'd go, oh, they had a terrible arc on ER. Like I felt
Sure,
through
right.
osmosis that thing of when ER spent 8 episodes on a really annoying plot line. My mother would hold it against that actor for the next 10 years.
That's how I was with Beverly Hills 90210.
Fair.
I
Very
think things
fair.
that have like kind of like over dramatic soap opera arcs like that, you tend to blame the actor for corrupting your show,
Yeah.
for taking the show hostage.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and then she ends up in like the thankless zone of like Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness, Norbit.
Norbit,
She is the
we-
object of desire
we
in
talked
Norbit.
about this.
Cuba Gooding Jr. and Eddie Murphy are
We talk
wrestling
about
over
this in our
her.
next episode.
I
That
re-
is the most thankless role of all time.
I refuse to watch it.
But in the middle of all that, there is Crash,
yes.
obviously, which gets her a BAFTA nomination. Another movie.
Doesn't
that
she win the BAFTA?
she wins the
She
BAFTA.
wins Best Supporting Actress.
Yes. That's another movie where
Yeah.
she's really big, in my opinion. She's really...
Yes.
She is doing a lot.
A lot
I mean,
of people are in that movie.
everyone
Everyone's
is.
pretty big. but-
Terrence Howard is doing a lot.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Terrence Howard is also another one that's always doing a lot. I've never seen Terrence Howard just chill in a movie.
I mean, the Thandie Newton performance from this era that I really like, which is also very big and thus very divisive, but I think is really good,
Yeah.
is her as Condoleezza Rice in W.
I don't agree with you.
I think she's the one
That's like a
person who's
cartoon
on the right
impression.
wavelength. Yeah, I like how cartoonish
No,
it
the
is.
person who's good in W is Elizabeth Banks for some reason. I
Oh,
don't know
Banks
why.
is also good in that.
That
I have
movie
not
is
seen it.
stupid.
That movie does not exist. That is astounding. That we don't talk about that. That the year that he was still in
He was still
office,
president.
his final year in office, Oliver Stone made a weirdly apolitical.
Yeah, weirdly sympathetic George W. Bush movie where it's like, look, he's a stupid guy. What can you do?
But the movie is just what would make this guy run for president.
It's just him being like, oh, shucks, I'm sure stupid. And then Richard Dreyfuss is Dick Cheney, and he's like, what if we were evil? Like,
It's
he's
kind of like a
hunched
Chauncey
over. you know?
Gardner narrative, right?
And then, like, in interviews, Richard Dreyfuss would be like, Dick Cheney's a fucking asshole. And we'd be
Yeah.
like, we get it. You don't like the guy. You know,
Dreyfus is insane in that movie. He is
really-
on one.
I
The
need
whole
to
cast is
watch
bizarre.
it. I mean, I saw Vice, so I feel like I should just
I mean,
complete it. And
check
watch
it out.
W is better than Vice.
Oh, thank God.
Right? It kind of by default.
I mean, the only person that
Sure.
I think is good in Vice is Tyler Perry.
I agree with you. Thank you.
he's better than Jeffrey Wright is in that role in W. And I love Jeffrey Wright.
Yes, I think
But
Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Wright
Wright's
is
kind of
not
hangdog.
getting it. Yeah.
He doesn't really, yeah.
I believe I make the same point in next week's episode. The only other person I think is good in W is Allison Pill.
Okay. Anyway, no, you're saying Vice.
In
You
Vice.
mean
Sorry.
Enough.
The point is, Thandie Newton, I think, has somewhat of a phenomenon that we love on this show.
Mhm.
You get angry when I use an example, but I think he is a good example. The Colin Farrell syndrome, where someone is a very magnetic, skilled actor who is also incredibly attractive, and everyone goes, oh, they're a movie star. And they kind of flounder when you put them in movie star roles.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they're only good when you let them do weird shit.
Right.
Yes.
They need to have a lot of weird shit to lom onto, and if not, then they're putting way too much into what should be a pure presence role.
Yeah,
right,
I
right,
agree. I just watched Roman J. Israel last night, which I love.
Great movie.
Great
We're all on board
movie.
here.
Movie.
And Colin Farrell in it. I'm just like, can't he just be in movies like this for?
My favorite
Yes.
actor alive.
Right, but then you
We're
watch
on the same page.
David
on
and I
this
disagree
one.
on this, but you watch something like Dumbo, and you're like,
He's good in Dumbo.
he's doing too much shit
No.
in Dumbo.
No,
Thandie Newton's daughter's in Dumbo. She's the star.
that is true.
Yeah.
And you spend half the movie being like, this girl is familiar
Yes.
looking. And then you're like, oh, it's Thandie Newton's
She looks
daughter with the
identical.
director of
She
Mamma Mia.
looks like a
Here
young
we go.
clone of Thandie Newton.
Yeah.
Thandie
Yeah.
Newton is married to the director of Mamma Mia. Here we go again.
Yes.
What
Our
a great
finest
film.
filmmaker.
All Parker.
Yeah.
Wow, so good.
So
But yeah, I want to point out the Thandie Newton performance that made me think that that she was a bad actress, and it's her performance in For Colored Girls, and really like
Sure.
everybody's kind of
Tyler
playing
Perry's
to their.
Oscar
Tessa
play.
Thompson is really great in For Colored Girls. She's like the
Fair.
only person where I'm just like, she's fantastic.
Kimberly
is
Elise is in that too, right?
She is
That
in
is
this.
the one time
Right.
Tyler Perry brought her back.
And that's a thankless role. Wow.
He kind of brought a lot of his collaborate, like Janet Jackson's in that, Whoopi Goldberg, Felicia Rashad,
Yeah.
Loretta
Anika Noni
Divine's
Rose,
in there.
Loretta
It's
Devine,
his Avengers.
Kerry Washington, a little bit,
Yeah.
except he's taking a play that's a series of monologues and turning it into a movie. And I don't know. I mean, it was a big swing.
Thandie Newton in that movie.
What
Okay,
is
so
Thandie
what's she
Newton
doing?
playing in
Yeah.
that film?
She's just like poor. That's like
Oh,
her
boy.
whole character
She
is
is
that
orange.
she's poor, and that she's just like yelling. She's just like yelling in this weird like. It's like she's trying to play ghetto, but since I don't believe that Thandie Newton has ever been to the ghetto, she
Uh-huh.
just sounds.
Thandie Newton, I think, she's from England.
Yeah.
I think she lived a relatively
Posh
genteel.
upbringing.
She
Yeah.
I
seems
believe,
very
yes.
posh to me,
Yes.
but it's just like her doing. What did I describe it as? Oh yeah, it was like poor drag, like a drag
Yeah,
performance
Sure,
of
sure,
poor
sure, right.
in that
Just-
movie.
Just way off.
Yeah, it's and I was thinking about For Colored Girls a lot when watching this because a lot of the noises that she makes remind me of the way that her voice sounded in For Colored Girls.
We have to talk about her performance in Beloved. She plays Beloved, who is a reincarnated ghost of a murdered child who is in like an adult body and is haunting her mother.
Right.
But is sort of taken the guise of like sort of essentially like an intellectually disabled woman who shows up on her porch in a fancy dress.
With
bugs all over her.
Drooling. Hacking.
The bugs are gone by the time she shows up.
I guess she's
I like when she has the bugs on her.
What I'm guessing is that she's supposed to be like a baby, but like in an
but
adult
they
body.
interpret her as like, oh, she just must be touched or strange or whatever.
Right. But I think that is the idea, is that she is a baby with adult
faculties.
faculties.
And so she kind of like growls and sort of makes like clicking noises and speaks in this very babyish way.
It is a very 90s Oscar part on paper.
It is on paper.
Where you're like, this allows an actor to
she's
really
almost
go
like
for
Nell or something, right? Where like she barely like has language, and it's sort of like, what is going on here? This is so showy. And
did you folks read Alison Wilmore's piece on Edward Norton that came out when Motherless Brooklyn came out? Which I think is one of the
really good piece.
best pieces of film writing I've read in the last year.
Well, she's outrageous. She shouldn't be allowed to work.
She's
too
amazing.
good.
Alison Wilmore?
It's an outrage.
She owns. But that piece, I thought she crystallized something really interesting. The piece is sort of on how, inarguably, Edward Norton was viewed as the guy. By the end of the late 90s.
In the 90s, it was like, that's when he was in the score. People were like, Brando, De Niro, Norton,
it's three
that's
generations.
A torch being passed.
Right. But you go like from 96 to 99, he makes 5 movies, gets 2 Oscar nominations. I mean, it was like he just hit the ground running. Right. And then 99, when Fight Club's coming out, there's the Vanity Fair profile that is like, it's undeniable Edward Norton is the actor of his generation. I believe that's the headline.
Then he directs a rom-com.
Right.
That's pretty charming.
He makes this weirdly charming rom-com and then does the score, and it felt like the anointment moment. Mm-hmm. And then his career like sort of drives off a cliff. And her whole piece...
I wouldn't say that.
It
gets Red Dragon and
strange.
25th Hour right after that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
25th Hour is his last...
It's Italian Job where he's like, I didn't want to be in this. And everyone's like, the movie's fine.
He
like,
was
relax.
legally obligated to be in the film.
And then he's in... That's when he's kind of gets into weird zones.
Yes.
Although, some people like The Illusionist.
I think he
did
good...
Illusions!
The movie I like after
For
that.
you. Painted Veil?
No, the one I think is really good that no one ever talks about is 2 Days in the Valley.
I've seen that one.
Down in the Valley.
Sorry.
In the Valley.
2 Days in the Valley is
the
like 90s sex thriller.
But Down in the Valley is good.
Down in the Valley is really good, and he's really good in it. But her argument
I didn't see it.
Is that he
I saw The Illusionist, saw those illusions. Sorry.
Her argument was that he spent most of the 90s like trying to live up to the reputation of his first 5 years, and those are the performances that arguably hold up the worst.
Right.
And
because they're very big and broad.
And it was when he was all about the capital A acting, where it was about the challenge of what's the difficult thing an actor can do and show you how difficult this is.
Like in Primal Fear, he has a stutter.
Right.
And
in the score, his fake cover is that he pretends to be an intellectually disabled man. That is part of his con.
Great.
And she was like, it's the kind of performance where like he wants to call attention to the fact that what he is doing is so difficult, and he's playing someone who's doing something.
And that is
difficult.
also the time when he starts developing Motherless Brooklyn. Like,
right.
That was supposed to come out like 2004 or whatever.
And she was, explaining that used to be this idea of acting was what kind of affliction, what different sort of identity that is outside of your own.
You know how much he isn't in a wheelchair? And look at him in this movie in a wheelchair.
Right,
like,
that
it's
became
acting.
like so much the bar for acting was like, oh my God, Sean Penn, you won't believe this, and I am Sam.
Right.
That it was like those.
That's when it starts to flip, though, right?
But
where people are like, wait,
but he still
wait,
gets the nomination. I feel like a couple years after that, people start going like, wait, is that cool? But that it was always viewed as like, oh my God, can you believe this? This actor is playing a guy with this,
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, Javier Bardem is going to be bedridden an entire movie? Like that sort of thing, which now is so like out of vogue.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
Was like at this point in time, like, oh my God, Thandie Newton has been chosen to play the woman, the adult woman who speaks only in grunts and is constantly drooling. Like that was viewed as like, oh, she's going to be a star. And then you watch this performance now and you're like, well, she's really going for it, but it's kind of uncomfortable to watch.
I rewatched the ending scene where all the church women show up on the yard, and then Jason Robards is there, and then she's like pregnant and she's completely nude.
She's naked.
Yeah.
She's
She's
screaming.
got like this hair.
She's got
and
the hair is right. She's got
the
the
hair
blanket.
is really happening. And then she's doing this thing with her teeth, which terrified me, where it kind of seems like she looked like a cartoon, like a Ren and Stimpy character, because like one side of her mouth was going one way, the other side of her mouth was going the other way.
Yeah.
And like they were just like, the teeth were like crashing into each other slanted. And I was just like, how did she even do that to her mouth?
That's the thing. Like, this performance is undeniably impressive on a technical level.
Right.
There are things she is doing physically and vocally that I can't even imagine
Sure,
trying
she's
to do.
magnetic. When she's on screen, you're interested in what she's doing, I suppose.
And it's effective in how upsetting it is, which is the main
guess
thing
so.
this character should accomplish in the movie, I
Guess so.
guess.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like a more dialed down performance would have been better.
I agree.
Well, the other thing is that the movie is largely dialed down.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not a movie that's like really scary. It's not a movie
No.
that's trying to be like that. It is a Demme movie, and it has that sort of like big heart of his.
Which I think is
And
probably...
so she is sort of tonally on a different chart.
I think this
Right.
is probably why she hired Demme, because you're like,
Right.
he made these two movies that deal with difficult things in a way that is lacking in the sort of sense of self-importance or Hollywood gloss, that deal with like, the trauma of these things with appropriate weight, that are sort of graphic without being exploitative, they don't feel salacious, and that he was such a good actor's director that he can keep this away from melodrama. I imagine that's what she was drawn to. But then Thandie Newton is in a different kind of movie.
Yeah.
She's going for it.
She is in the more conventional sort of Oscar
She's
weepy
flailing.
version of this film. Yeah.
Jourdain, what do you think of Demme in general?
I like him. Well, I like his movies about troubled white women.
Sure,
That's
there's-
kind of like my
There's something
genre for
wild
him.
of
Yeah.
the world.
I love Something Wild. That's one of
Yes.
my absolute favorite movies.
It's a
I
great
love
film.
love Married to the Mob. We'll watch it at any point that it's on.
Absolutely.
Rachel Getting Married, really good.
Yes.
I'm a little more, I guess, lukewarm on some of his the movies that people give him awards for. Like, I'm not really into Silence of the Lambs.
Fair enough.
I think that it's good, but I think I waited a really long time to watch it, like past the point to where it was a fundamental like horror kind of thriller staple. But yeah, no, I generally like him, but I just
It is this weird run that's like a total outlier in his career, because there's like a straight line in like the 80s and the 70s of him building up his sort of voice and his own weird like
yeah.
tonal balance.
Right.
And then like Silence, Philadelphia, Beloved. And especially the gap between Philadelphia and Beloved, I think, is so telling.
It's a long gap.
Right,
Yeah.
where by all accounts, I think the sort of the criticisms of transphobia against Silence really hit him hard. He felt very guilty, and he got Philadelphia off the ground very quickly as a sort of trying to make a corrective film. And then he seemed pretty content making documentaries.
He only made one. He only made
Between
one doc.
92 and 98?
Yeah.
What's the one he made?
Oh boy, let me look up his filmography.
Didn't he make Cousin Bobby and
That's
Storefront
92.
Hitchcock?
So it's just
Same
Storefront
year.
Well, it's between Silence and Philadelphia.
Okay.
And then he makes Storefront Hitchcock in 98.
Weird.
So he really didn't do anything. He was really chilling.
He seemed kind of out.
He was chilling.
Yeah. And Oprah kind of pulled him back in. And then after this.
When Oprah comes knocking.
But after this, he like zags again.
Sure. After this, he makes
Truth About Charlie.
and
Yeah.
Manchurian Candidate relatively quickly, like 2002, 2004.
Which Truth About Charlie, while not entirely successful, is him kind of trying to get back to the 80s Something Wild energy.
Goofy.
Right. Despite it being a big studio film and ostensibly a thriller, you watch it and tonally, it is far more similar to those 80s comedies.
Is it good? I have not seen it.
It is very strange.
It's very strange.
Okay.
It's far more
I don't
interesting.
think it's going to settle your opinion on Thandie either.
No.
You can really go either way with what she's doing in that one.
Okay.
The advantage she has there is that Mark Wahlberg, she seems cool, calm, and collected compared
Yes.
to Mark Wahlberg, who is like, I don't know what am I
Yeah.
doing here? What is this?
Is that supposed to be like charade?
It's
Is that
charade, all right.
But why would Mark Wahlberg be?
because
It's a great question.
Will Smith dropped out.
Will Smith was supposed to play the role.
Oh, okay.
And they dropped out, and
It
they were
should've
like,
been-
who has that energy?
They should have just waited for. They should have just tried to get Will back.
Uh-huh. Agreed.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that next week. You should see it. If you like Married
If
to the Mob
nothing
and
else,
Something Wild,
it's an
it's
interesting
of a
watch.
piece of those, and
it's
weird.
very in love with like French New Wave
Yeah.
and sort of a weird homage, and like Agnes Varda pops up and
Oh my
things like
God.
that
Anna
are happening.
Karenina.
Anna Karenina pops
Charles
up.
Aznavour.
Charles Aznavour pops up.
It's very weird.
And it's
Okay.
clearly one of those movies where everyone's having a nice time.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like, but it's fucking weird.
It's fucking
Okay.
weird. But it is not a movie that has the sort of important film sort of weight on it that this does.
Yeah.
But I also feel like this is a movie where Demme is trying to, in terms of having the movie take place at a more modest pitch, that he is trying to steer this movie out of the self-importance that I think most filmmakers would attach to it. Especially if you're like the only person who's ever getting to adapt a Toni Morrison book.
Here's one
You
thing.
have Oprah putting all of her weight behind it. I feel the movie is actually putting energy into trying to remain modest in its sort of tenor.
yeah.
Here's the thing I just found out.
Okay.
Peter Weir was at one point attached to direct.
Interesting.
Oh my God.
And Oprah fired him because he didn't want her to play the lead role. Which, like,
Weird.
Peter, relax. Like, let
Yeah.
her play the lead role.
She's a great choice for the
Exactly.
lead role.
Seems like a weird line to draw. Maybe
Yeah.
he just thought, like, she's going to be the boss. I won't be able to direct. Like, maybe he was just worried about, like, power balance stuff. But, like, it's her movie.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. This is kind of her movie.
It is.
Yeah.
I do think Demi is, who has always been, like, a big collaborator.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe
is
another
like,
reason she
let's
hires him is he is
channel-
a notoriously collaborative filmmaker, and she knows that ultimately she wants final say on this movie.
And I mean, everything that she's doing, the way that she's shot, the way that she's framed, she's great.
She's great.
Yeah, I feel.
I think she's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
She's
think,
it's a very sad performance
Yeah.
in all the right ways.
yeah.
but it doesn't feel
It doesn't feel
self-pitying.
like
It
a
doesn't
bunch
feel
of bullshit.
showy.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept on thinking about
She's
like,
good in The Color Purple too. As we said, she's basically good
She's
whenever she's in something.
fantastic in The Color
Yeah.
Purple. Loved her in that.
I-
Which
I'm-
Danny Glover is opposite in that.
Yes.
He's scary.
Right.
Glover.
yeah, he
Right.
is.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by the phenomenon of movie stars who have another day job
Yeah.
and just occasionally decide to be movie stars.
Because in more recent years, as she's dropped into things like The Butler or Selma,
No, right.
she's always good.
yes.
You're
And-
like, oh, and you never are like, that's the most like one of the most famous people on earth,
No.
which is tough because she's very famous.
And even like Wrinkle in Time, where she is bug nuts,
well,
and
she's
the movie
very large.
is
She's,
insane. She's
She's
humongous.
100 feet tall.
Right. You never you have to pull yourself out of the film to remind yourself it is weird that I'm watching Oprah be the size of 7 buildings.
She's kind of well cast in that because they're supposed to be like
Yeah, no,
superstars in that weird way.
I'm a Wrinkle in Time apologist. I really, really like that movie.
I don't know what Griffin thinks exactly, but we are both definitely Wrinkle in Time. We're intrigued by a Wrinkle
I'm fascinated
in Time.
by it. I truly could not make sense of it. I have no value judgment of that movie.
It's a very interesting movie.
I really, really loved it, but I also saw it. I saw it at Alamo Drafthouse with a bunch of adults, it was so weird to see that many
Yeah.
adults there. Like, I have 3 little sisters, so when I go see kids' movies, I'm like, am I gonna buy this DVD for my sisters? So that's why I'm
So you
there.
didn't see it with them. You were like pre-screening
Yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah. And so it was just like to see all these adults there for like a pretty late screening of
Yeah.
A Wrinkle in Time. I was just like, and then they were mad the entire time that it wasn't what they thought. I was just like, this
It's a
is
challenging
weird.
film.
I
It's very strange. Film.
I saw it at a theater where it
all
had
those close-ups.
it had clearly been bought out like 40% of the audience by a church group. And I saw
Sure.
like a weekend matinee.
Right.
And it was at the Disney Theater, the El Capitan in LA.
Okay.
Where before the movie they had an organist play a medley of songs.
Sounds nice.
And they did a laser like indoor planetarium show
okay.
where they like projected stars.
Oh my
It was very
God.
bizarre. And the movie had been out for like 4 weeks. So there was like all this pomp and circumstance to like an 11 a.m. like Sunday screening.
Wow.
That was mostly children and like
amazing.
group leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Sounds
very
like a nice
bizarre.
audience.
It was a nice audience. They were very into the movie. I just couldn't. It is such a bizarre film in so many ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wonder why.
it definitely is. Love Zach Galifianakis in it.
I think he's great
He's
in it.
good.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
Pine in it.
Yeah.
I like Pine in it.
No, I mean Pine is like I feel like the moment where he was. What was it? It was like the Oscars. They were doing a song from
when he
Selma,
cried at
and he
Selma.
was crying. I feel like it sent a signal to Black people, including me. We want this man here. Like,
I literally remember him being hired by Ava for like
Yeah.
almost
Yes, because he
directly
just
after
like had
that.
this like, oh yeah, he used to date Zoe
Singleton.
Kravitz,
Yeah.
and now he's crying.
And Jourdain, what is the common thread between the Selma moment and Wrinkle in Time? He's got that hot ass gray beard.
He really does. He looks so hot.
He looks so fucking good.
He
Yeah.
should. I assume in Wonder Woman 2, 1984, he's just like plucked out of time, or he's in her brain or something. But like, what if you updated him with a little beard?
I know.
Right? You gave him an update.
I would love that.
Exactly.
That'd be so good.
Yeah.
I
I also love that he's Spider-Man in Spider-Verse. He's good Spider-Man.
Yes.
Where
Yeah,
they're like,
he's
who's
the-
like, yeah,
The one who
Paragon.
dies.
Right.
Yeah. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
So no, I was watching when I was rewatching the end of this movie
Mhm.
this morning, just so that it was like fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
I was thinking so much about. Have y'all seen Atlantics?
yes.
Yes.
Yes, I was just thinking so much about
Another ghost story.
what Maddie Diop could have done with the material. I think like if this movie was made now, she's the person that I would want to do it.
Absolutely.
That is the weird contradictory.
That movie has that
like-
kind of tactile ghost stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say it's the weird contradictory nature of like it feels like the best adaptation of this movie. I mean, you were saying miniseries, but I feel like the best adaptation of this movie is probably the ultra low budget one, where you have to get very creative with limited resources and make something that is more expressionistic,
Yeah.
you know, in that kind of way.
The stuff I like most in this
that's more
movie is
muted,
like
yeah.
when
Yeah.
Danny Glover shows up on the porch.
Yeah.
And she brings him in, and he just sees the red light, as we were talking about. It's a very effective and very simple
Yeah.
little cinematic trick.
Yeah.
But there is a weird thing of like the most effective stuff in the movie, and even when you have the scenes where like the spirit is like attacking the house, there's something kind of charmingly analog about those effects where you can tell it's just like pieces of furniture on strings.
Yeah.
It
No.
moves like a very simple
It's
sort of
funny
like
because they don't do the poltergeist stuff much after the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it is because poltergeists are on screen inherently goofy, right? Because
Yes.
it is just like, whoa, like,
But you're
plates flying
there's
around.
something
right.
kind of like charming about how lo-fi all of that
Yeah.
stuff feels in terms of the actual manipulation of the objects in the room and things like that.
Yeah.
And something like in Atlantics, the most striking thing in that movie is the way she uses mirrors, which is such a smart, like no budget solution
Yeah.
for visualizing a very complicated thing that otherwise would probably be done with CGI if anyone was making that story on a larger scale. And it's that thing where like this movie shouldn't cost that much, but also you look at it and there are two massive movie stars in it, right? In every scene. And their costumes look so expensive, and they're very expensive
Costumes, the
recreations.
Oscar-nominated costumes.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Ollie
the house,
Atwood.
I mean, all these elements in the film that are supposed to look very ramshackle
Yeah.
are ramshackle in a very expensive, bespoke way.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a problem that I
It does have
with
that
it.
like 90s Oscar
Well, 'cause,
movie
like-
kind of sheen.
Yeah.
Reading the book, I think a lot about the feelings, and a lot of the conflicts are internal. Like there's the sense that Denver and Sethi want to be haunted, and then
Right.
when Paul D comes, he gets rid of that haunting. And the reason why Denver does not like him is because that thing that she had that she somehow made her feel less alone isn't there anymore, and there's just a man here instead.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of that stuff
That dynamic is kind of excised.
that and,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that dynamic is the root of the story, and
Right.
it gets excised for stuff that I don't think necessarily works.
Denver is just not a character in the film until she needs to be. Until the latter half, until
Yeah.
the sort of the scene with her
And Denver
grandma.
is the driving like thing in
Right.
the book.
Right.
Like how she reacts to things, her relationship with Beloved, when she realizes that Beloved is actually her sister.
That scene's pretty excellent
Yeah.
on Elise's part.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
there's all that stuff. And then of course like Sethi's kind of like internal thing is this idea of like she wants to be happy, but she almost doesn't feel like she deserves to be happy because of what she's been through.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of that internal stuff I almost feel that Demme I feel gets at in other movies. He has trouble getting at it in this movie.
I think he was
Yeah.
probably very tentative
Sure.
about his position as a white man making this film. I think he has talked about that he was like sort of intimidated when she offered it to him and had to be talked into doing it because he didn't feel like he was the right person to tell the story, and only eventually signed on because Oprah was so adamant that she thought he was. So I think, especially if you're trying to get at the internal life, and it is such a specific internal life that is so specific to like a culture and a history and a place and an existence that is so outside of his own. I think he probably was afraid to tiptoe too much into it. I think you're right that probably the best version of this movie is a little more abstract with that, because Toni Morrison is a writer who is so much about the internal life. And that is a thing that is very hard to translate literally into screenplay.
As you said, like the flashbacks are mostly just painful. I don't like the sort of super saturation that he does and all the, the kind of like, can you tell this horrible past is coming back to the right? Like it always feels way too like sort of obvious, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have this issue a lot with like kind of like the way that slave narratives. I'm kind of the opinion that most slave movies are bad, just because I don't feel like we've found a good way to make a good one yet. And yes, I include 12 Years a Slave in this. I think it's bad. So it's weird. It was kind of making me think of the flashbacks because I recently watched the Nate Parker Birth of a Nation.
Saw you tweeting about this.
Kind of reminded me of that.
That movie stinks.
It's
no offense to it.
Real bad.
Offense to it, I suppose.
It's real bad. Yeah.
You were also saying
has a movie that was made cheaply. Obviously, it was an independent film, but also has all those annoying tricks of like dialing up the saturation or things like that, just to convey like this is grim and brutal, and hot and sweaty and things like that.
Yeah, I just feel like there's something more like the way that Seth describes Sweet Home in the book, and this idea of like, on the one hand, she's getting to have like a little bit of joy. On the other hand, it's like a terrible situation where she's dealing with these traumas. And there's so much conflict in the way that she recalls that time. And I don't catch any of that conflict in the movie.
Yeah, maybe it's partly the Oprah problem or whatever. It's what you sort of have to contend with, is that she's sort of becoming the main character.
Right.
Partly it's just her superstardom. And I don't, what she's driving the project. And maybe that's sort of an inherent problem. It's like you're leaning too much on her.
I think so much of her drive in making this film is, I want to share this story with a larger audience. I mean, she viewed it in the way that she views endorsing any book on her show.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I know about like after this movie when it didn't go well, like she was just, it's not even that she was like mad at Black people for not coming, but she was just like disappointed. She was like a teacher. It's like, I made this thing and it's like really, and y'all didn't come out. But it's also just like the way that it was packaged, kind of like the way that it was done. It doesn't really ease you in a way that like, for example, The Color Purple did, because, that's Spielberg. That's like a lot of the genius of Spielberg. It's that you can take this really hard subject matter, but he's pulling you in emotionally and he's kind of easing you into the harsher aspects.
Yeah, I mean, she's talked about when this movie came out and bombed, it was the only time she has ever experienced depression in her life.
Well, not the only, no. No, she's talked about other.
Well, I mean, I think that this
I'm
was
going to read you this quote from Wikipedia.
Okay.
Yeah. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, she's had some very.
I know she's had a traumatic life. That's why.
She talked about how she ate mac and cheese all day and gained 30 pounds, and then realized later that she was depressed.
Right. But I do think that this was a huge low point for her. And I mean, I think that was part of, I talked about this a little bit when I wrote about The Women of Brewster Place, where it kind of feels like Black women in those stories kind of had to move to television to get seen. And I think that Oprah kind of, after this movie, was just like, okay, well, I'm just putting it on TV now. Because I feel like if we would have asked her like a long time ago, it's like, oh, what are you going to, if you're going to make Their Eyes Were Watching God with Halle Berry, you'd want it to be on the big screen. Right. And instead, it's not. It's a movie that a lot of people have not seen. It's just a television movie.
Well, and the shift becomes like she will loan her Oprah powers to another filmmaker. She will help assist them in getting the movie made.
Yeah.
She'll champion it, but she's no longer driving the bus on her film projects.
Yeah.
And she starts acting again, essentially, when she leaves network TV. When she moves to
She has more
OWN and she
time on
starts
her
doing The
hands.
Daily
Right,
Show.
right.
I want to read you this quote because I know Oprah has lived through a lot in her
No,
life.
I understand. I'm sure she said something.
This is her
But
quote.
she literally like left a suicide note when she's.
I'm very
Okay, all right,
aware.
all right, okay.
I just want to read you her quote
Okay,
in her
the
own
quote,
words.
the quote.
She said, "It was the only time in my life that I was ever depressed, and I recognized that I was depressed because I've done enough shows on the topic. Oh, this is what people must feel like who are depressed."
I just have to assume she means
That's a crazy quote.
post-fame.
That's such
Right,
a
like-
wild thing for her to say.
Right? Isn't it insane?
She's talked about literally like
I
I was
know.
so depressed I wrote a suicide
I'm very
note.
aware.
That's so weird. That's like if I got famous and then like went on a talk show and it's just like, when this movie bombed,
Yeah.
like I have never been through any struggle.
That's why it jumped out to me because I'm like, this is someone who's been very open with all the traumas of her life and how she built her life, and she's the great empath, and she's always explaining her own experiences against the
I
experiences
understand
of
what
people
you're
on the
saying.
show.
Of course, it's very.
And then
Yeah.
she says it's the low point of her entire career
mean,
and the
I-
only time she's ever been depressed.
I think she really thought that this was going to be big.
She did.
Which is crazy, and I don't mean that in a mean way exactly. It's just sort of like how the sort of tunnel vision one might sort of get with these kinds of projects, because this is not a commercial film.
No.
Well-
It's very long. It's melancholy and it's slow and it's sort of meandering and like it's not plotty.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of.
It's not a word of mouth movie exactly.
No.
It's like a very. I noticed this a lot with like when an actor or director or producer has this passion project, when it comes out, it's always not what they expected.
Yeah.
The gestation period,
Right.
the tunnel vision, everything. But there's also this idea that like if it's very, very urgent for you to make it, you assume that it's very, very
Yes.
urgent for everyone to see
Which
it.
that's a great point. That's probably the sort of the way she's thinking about it. But I remember I found some quote from Demme where he's like, the movie made $22 million. It played fine and eventually got pulled from theaters because Disney wanted the screens for The Waterboy.
Yeah.
Which is wild in and of
Disney
itself.
wanted the screens for
Which
the
is like, it's a whole other thing to think about.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, but like, he's right. Like, this movie,
He's like, for this
played
film-
like an awards
Right.
sort of like prestige movie.
He's
that
like, this
doesn't-
movie's a
yeah.
failure because it cost $80 million and was promoted by Oprah.
And
Yeah.
Disney.
But
Right.
this
Yeah,
film
right.
making $22 million is kind of bizarre.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is not a commercial film.
Yeah.
I think the thing was that this was like the time between Color Purple and this film, Oprah just has this meteoric rise. And, you know, she was already a big deal, but then she just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger culturally every year after that. And she was this person who could kind of make anyone a star, you know, could make any product successful, could make
Absolutely
any
right.
book
She could
successful.
sort
She could make careers single-handedly. And I think she believed, even though this was difficult,
Sure, that I-
uncommercial material, that if I devote a week of shows, if I spend months talking about my involvement in this film, that my audience will show up. That my audience is so baked in that they will show up for this.
Yeah, I think that's a miscalculation of what people will read versus
Yes.
what they watch. But also, there's the fact, and I've been writing about this, so it's fresh in my mind. When the Oscars decided to go from 5 to 10 nominations, is when more Black films made their way into the Oscars. Before
Yeah.
that, it was like I think there were only like 4 films with primarily Black cast that were nominated for Best Picture. I think it was like A Soldier Story, Sonder,
Yep.
Color Purple, one other, Ray. I think Ray was the
Jeez.
other
Ray.
one.
Ray.
He's Ray.
He's Ray.
So it was like, the thing about it is that now it's normal to see like all of these like prestige Black films, If Beale Street Could Talk and all of these things. But in the time that this was made, it did not have the kind of audience or the kind of award space that it would need to really make an impact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that was also like part of the calculus of when there were Black filmmakers making films with Black cast, they would always hit a sort of glass ceiling in terms of Oscar credibility, where it's like Singleton can get the Best Director nomination, but Boys in the Hood is not going to get Best Picture. It's not going to
Yeah.
get any acting nominations, you know? And Do the Right Thing can get like screenplay, but it's not going to get director or picture, and the only cast member nominated is the white guy.
I mean,
And in the 90s specifically,
Yeah.
no Black films were nominated for Best Picture. And
Yeah.
also, it was like Black people were mostly out of the Oscars in the 90s with a few caveats like
there'd be one or two
honorary awards,
Yeah.
What's Love Got to Do with It, and like a couple things like that. But for some reason, the entire 90s is like mostly a blank spot. And it's an interesting time because that was when a lot of interesting experimental black films were being made on a constant
And
basis.
in the independent
indie
world,
movies
it was kind of
are cropping
booming.
up. And
Yeah,
you have,
yeah.
right? You have your Just Another Girl on the IRTs and
Right.
East Bayou and like,
Cassie
more-
Lemons.
right.
And, yeah.
um,
What was the thing I was going to say? The other movie I kept on thinking about in relation to this, not as a film but as like a cultural thing, is Malcolm X, where the
Yeah.
movie's announced and Warner Brothers has hired Norman Jewison, who at that time was viewed as the ally filmmaker. He's the one filmmaker who makes films about black people, consistently. And Spike Lee led this big outcry of like, this should not be directed by a white man. Right. And it was like months of sort of like public sort of debate about it. And then Norman Jewison stepped down and Spike Lee made the film. And the film was fairly successful, but it also was like viewed as, oh, it's a Denzel thing. And it didn't get the other Oscar nominations that it seemed to get. It was him very deliberately trying to make
a big prestige movie.
right, a
about
big prestige
famous
movie.
person.
But there was always that ceiling. And to some degree, Oprah, who is a very canny businesswoman, I wonder if she thought you need a white director with a proven Oscar acceptance track record to be able to permeate that world.
Well,
at
that's
this
what
point in
happened with
time.
Color Purple, so
Yeah.
I understand why
right.
she would think that.
Right.
And she got an Oscar nomination, of course, and yes.
Yeah.
Let me read you something I found. I found a sort of summary of the coffee table book.
Okay.
So there's a point at which, apparently, Oprah, her acting style is, very empathetic and very right, like sort of, emotional. She's an emotional actress. And as Demme diplomatically described, quote, "If Oprah had any work to do, it was to not confuse her empathy with how Setha feels." There was a scene in which Setha described what freedom feels like. Demme was shooting around her and then sat down with Oprah and said, like, we're going to turn the camera around and shoot Danny today. And we'll do you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And Oprah was like totally crushed because she's like, I know I'm blowing this. Like, I'm fucking this up.
Uh-huh.
Like, Demme was trying to be like sweet about it, but like Oprah could tell like they were kind of like, she's not figuring this out. She's just being Oprah initially. And then Toni Morrison came to set and watched one scene and said, why are you playing angry here? That character's not angry in this scene. Like she's just watching Oprah and she's like, this isn't how I wrote this.
Yeah.
And Winfrey freaked out, went to her trailer and like started crying. It was like, Toni hates me. And they had to be like, Toni, go away. You're freaking her out. Like, so like she was making this movie. She was freaked out. She was like, I can't get this wrong.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it's fascinating stuff.
Can I read you this quote that I found that I think is really interesting? This is her talking about the movie in 2013.
Demme also says like it was her movie. And if she felt strongly about something, I was fine to defer.
Because talking about this idea of like, why did she think that this film could work on this budget level at this size as a major Oscar thing, right? In 2013, Winfrey reflected on the film saying, to this day I ask myself, was it a mistake? Was it a mistake to not try and make it a more commercial film? To take some things out and tell the story differently so that it would be more palatable to an audience? Well, if you wanted to make a film that everybody would see, then that would be a mistake. But at the time, I was pleased with the film that we did because it represented to me the essence of the beloved book, which is the weird sort of like nether zone this movie is caught in, which like it's a pretty literal, faithful adaptation of a thing that is hard to adapt literally.
Yeah.
It is pretty unsparing in terms of what it's doing and its lack of commercial concern. It's buoyed by her confidence that she could make anything commercial. So it doesn't sort of play the audience in a way that a more sort of satisfying, weepy Oscar film that probably would not age well would have done at the time. But it also is boosted up by the confidence of her being such an industry in and of herself that she didn't even conceive of the idea that maybe the best way to make this movie is for like $5 million.
Right.
Even if it is with Demme, to not burden it with that sort of pressure on itself. I mean, another thing I kept thinking about watching this is the unmade Lynn Ramsey Lovely Bones, where she talks about so much that she read that book, she loved it, she bought the rights herself before the book became a big hit, and spent like 8 years trying to make that film in her like sort of Netherlands of her career after Morven Caller, and was pretty close to getting it made.
Yep.
And then Peter Jackson read the book and went, I want this, and Alice Sebold ripped up the contract and was like, well, he's Peter Jackson, we have to let him make it. And
That movie.
yeah, and Lynn Ramsey talks about where she was like, it was
that movie is bananas bad.
a nightmare.
Yeah.
But Lynn Ramsey talks about, she was like, I loved the book, but I also understood there was no way to make a literal adaptation of it.
Right.
And the larger the scale and the budget became, the more you would have to distort what the book was actually about in order to make it more commercial. And she was like, my version of it was very abstract,
Right.
which I think is the only way it would work. And Peter Jackson talks about when, like, making the film, like how many of his decisions were business minded. He was like, well, I love this book, but obviously that doesn't work in a movie that costs $100 million. You know, that immediately that calculus had to happen of like, well, they're letting me use all this CGI. I feel obligated to make a movie that could possibly do well, which is this contradictory thing with a book like this where you kind of can't burden it with that.
Which is just, it's such a wild thing to hear from the person who made Heavenly Creatures.
I know. But it's like, what a great example of like, you can't go home again. You know, when he announced that he was making that, you're like, oh my God, is Peter Jackson going to go back to Heavenly Creatures mode?
Right.
And then you're like, wait, no. Like,
Why does this have so many special effects? Right.
It costs
Yeah.
$100 million.
Why is a ship in a bottle crashing through the window or whatever? All that shit.
Like all this
Another
shit.
movie that Mark Wahlberg seems very anxious to be in. He's just like, why am I here?
And was also
a
cast
last
like
minute replacement.
right,
yes,
10 days
yeah.
before it started filming.
Because Ryan Gosling was too fat.
Well, he got fat to make up for how young he felt he was.
It was one of those things where people were like, I heard he got fired because he gained a weird amount of weight. And then people were like, no, he didn't. And then like a year later, they were like, yeah, no, that's what it was. It was really weird.
He felt like he was too young. Peter Jackson was like, I think you're the guy.
Right.
He gained a lot of weight and made himself look shitty to try to look older.
Right.
And then Peter
He showed
Jackson
up
was
and-
like, what's your take on the character? And he's like, it's like an overweight, depressed guy. Like he grew a beard
Yeah.
Oh
and
my
got
God.
really soft.
Right.
And then he was like, this is not my take on the character, and then fired him.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Very weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I the bigness of them, like I think I keep on thinking about like I don't know, like how I would imagine Their Eyes Were Watching God, which I feel like is like a very, you know, small personal story. And I was just like, oh my God, what if there was a Their Eyes Were Watching God adaptation, like this beloved adaptation?
Yeah.
Like there's so much, like,
I'm actually surprised there. I guess it's just because Morrison has held on to her rights, but that there hasn't been another Morrison adaptation.
Yeah.
I would really like there to be one now. That
I feel like now that, there's a lot
There
of
are a
people
lot-
out there who could take a
right.
swing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are just like a lot of really interesting Black women directors that are making like Dee Reese making Mudbound. Like,
Yeah.
like I feel like she could do a Toni Morrison.
Right.
Definitely.
Maddie Diep, as you said.
Oh yes. Oh yeah, definitely her. Yeah, I feel like it's the time, and I kind of it's just I mean I love Toni Morrison and I like cried when she died, but it's like it would have been so great if we would have been able to get another one like right in that she could see. But I think now would be a pretty opportune time to do it, especially so that we can maybe move. Because I mean,
Yeah.
as much as I have issues with Beloved, it was refreshing to watch it because it was not like all of the movies about cops that I've been seeing lately.
Sure.
Very tired of seeing cops. Like, I would just love to see Black people do something that has nothing to do with
But there are
cops in a movie.
21 bridges.
There are
and
21.
he's
I
got
don't know
to
if you know
close.
this.
The thing that's wildest about 21 bridges, you know this, right? Is that
What?
there are 17 bridges in and out of New York. And the movie was initially called 17 Bridges and was about like you got to raise all the bridges
Right,
or whatever.
right.
There are also 4 tunnels out of New York. So if you add it, you got 21 exits, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think they just suddenly announced that the movie was called 21 Bridges. You know,
Yeah.
without explanation.
Uh-huh.
And what data cruncher was like, audiences like 21 more than they like 17. Just
should-
make it happen.
It should have been called 17 Bridges and 4 Tunnels.
Right, really specific.
Lift
I mean,
the tunnels.
maybe it was too close. There was that movie 16 Blocks. Maybe
Sure.
they were just
Right.
like, 17 is just a
Yeah.
17
16 blocks,
bridge.
They'll think
17
it's a
bridges,
sequel.
18
Yeah.
tunnels, 19 ferries. Like,
Yeah.
let's just
Yeah.
keep going.
But yeah, I'm just kind of tired. Like Naomi Harris recently, which is another actress
oh, yes.
that was
Yeah.
kind
Black
of
and
like
blue.
Black and blue.
Right.
like Tandy Newton, Kimberly Elise, Naomi Harris. They were all kind of plugging away at
Yeah.
around the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh my God, Naomi Harris is doing something post
Her
Moonlight,
first lead role ever.
and then it's just like Black and Blue, and it's like her and Tyrese, and I'm tired.
Black
It's a
and Blue
weird
is a
film.
real crowdsourced title too. where they're
Yes.
like, because the cops that's blue and
It's
she's
the
black. We're done,
seasons,
right?
the cops. Like,
have
I'm
the
just-
two of you seen that film? You've seen that film?
I have not.
Okay, I saw it in theaters.
Is there
Oh.
any reason you saw it in theaters?
Because I'm a big Naomi Harris fan.
She's
Fair.
great.
I love
yeah.
Naomi Harris.
And I also I'm quietly a huge Tyrese stan,
Sure.
largely because of the Fast and Furious franchise.
Tyrese is very funny.
But I always I wish he did more film work.
Yeah,
And-
Baby Boy. I mean,
Yes.
remember when he sort of started acting and it
you
was
know-
like, oh, this guy's going to be something.
You know what great Tyrese movie you should watch?
What?
Waist Deep. I don't know if you've
Oh.
seen Waist Deep.
I know
I
the movie.
rewatched it recently because I was reviewing Queen and Slim.
Yeah.
And Waist Deep is the better Queen and Slim.
Vondi.
I believe that.
I believe it
Is
too.
that Vondi Curtis Hall?
It's a Vondi Curtis
Yes,
Hall.
it
I believe it's his
is.
Glitter follow.
Wow.
Like it's his first movie after Glitter.
It's so wild because Glitter is so bad, but Waist Deep is so good.
Waist Deep and Gridlocked. Vondi Curtis
Yeah.
Hall. Make another
Yeah.
movie, Vondi.
Yeah.
Casey Lemons' husband, I believe, right?
yes,
is
yes,
it? Wow.
he is.
yes.
I want to say I kind of like Black and Blue.
Fair enough.
Oh, is it good?
It's kind of good.
Okay, well, I'm gonna watch it. I was just like,
I'm going to watch that shit on HBO. If
I
I'm
was
gonna
just
watch it.
tired.
Yes.
I was just like, okay, I'm going to the movies. I'm gonna see this thing about a cop again.
Yeah, totally.
But like, it's good to hear that it's good.
It's not great,
Sure.
but I think it's a pretty
But
interesting
wasn't
balance
there also
between
just
yes.
if we can just keep talking about black actors who like fully prove their bona fides and then get ignored by Hollywood. David Oyelowo.
Yes.
Also, didn't he have a cop movie this year with like time travel or something?
Yes, he
Don't
did.
Let
It
Go?
was called Don't Let Go.
Right, with Storm Reed of
Yes, yeah.
Wrinkle in Time.
Blumhouse is so weird. Well, they'll like do a big rollout for certain movies, and they're just like, you have to see this. And then
Yeah.
there's stuff like Don't Let Go, where Blumhouse is like, well, here it is.
Anyway,
I think it premiered at Sundance
It was
with
a different
different
title.
title, and it was a very different cut.
it was called Relive when it was at Sundance.
from the director of Mean Creek.
That's
Oh,
true.
yeah, that is.
I did not know that.
Everything about that movie's weird, and it was like a weird
The movies.
Blumhouse dump that also wasn't released by Universal, which almost every other Blumhouse film is.
That's weird.
Yeah.
The other thing that guy made was a movie called The Details, which has a poster where a piano is going to fall on Tobey Maguire's head.
Oh, yes, I've seen that one.
You've seen this?
Yes.
This does not seem like a real movie.
I watch a lot of not real movies.
Like, and this
What's
seems like
in
you
the
would put the
piano?
DVD and the DVD would be just like playing trailers and you keep pressing menu and the DVD's like cannot perform function. You're like, come on, where's the movie? And it just would never play.
Well, it's one of those things where like Tobey Maguire is like playing against type as a dick, but then when you find out that he's kind of like a dick in real life, it's like, oh, is he
Sure.
playing
Sure,
himself?
sure. Not as interesting.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire, Elizabeth Banks, Dennis Haysbert, Ray Liotta, Kerry Washington,
Well, it's
Laura
one of
Linney.
It's one of those like, there are those indie movies. I feel like at the beginning of Sundance, it was like throw a bunch of actors in a thing and we're gonna all watch it. But now it's like throw a bunch of actors in a thing and nobody's gonna watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
In a
And then
way,
there'll
the-
be 3 that they do, but most
Right.
of them they don't.
But the more
Yeah.
big name actors in a Sundance movie, in a way, the more it's signaled that it's probably a turkey.
Yeah,
You
I
want one with 2 really good performances.
yeah, I'm thinking of one like called like Butter, where it's something
Yeah.
about like a yes.
I remember
Oh,
butter.
yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
a butter sculpting competition.
It was like a
Yes.
blacklist script where
That was-
everyone in the cast was like a huge name.
That was very
Yes.
much
Yes.
one of those the Happy Texases, right?
Right.
You know, where
Yeah.
it's like coming out of Sundance or Telluride or whatever, and people are like, "Oh, this is no, this is good."
and like Hugh Jackman's the 5th lead.
yeah, he's the. I think he's the and. I think he got an and.
I mean,
I
pretty
feel like the
crazy.
only recent movie that I can think of where it's like throw a bunch of people in and it's good is like Logan Lucky. Love Logan.
I mean, great take.
great movie.
Soderbergh's good at that though, and when he puts a lot of people in a movie, it's an eclectic bunch. Like it
Yeah.
feels like he's curated pretty well.
Right.
The
yeah.
cast. Yeah.
Loved Daniel Craig's fake Southern accent. Didn't realize that the fake Southern accent is just his thing now.
He loves it. He loves to put it
He
on like an
loves
old
sounding
smoking
like,
jacket.
like Foghorn Leghorn.
Yes, he does.
And I'm from Georgia, and so I'm like a cop of like
Sure.
Southern accents. I'm just like, what region are you supposed to
he
be
gets
from?
away with it by just being.
He's
this
just
is
so
fake.
he's so strange.
He's
and
so
he-
weird.
and he commits to it so much.
Right.
And I also think that he's tired of being boring. I feel like that's
Yes.
his new
Yes.
thing
I
now.
think
No
he's just like, I never want to be James Bond if I can help it. I want to be as goofy as
I wanna
possible.
be funny.
I
Yeah.
want to be funny. Here's some other things about Beloved I want to tell you guys.
Can I ask
that just
one
didn't know.
question very quickly about Knives Out before we move on?
All right.
Why doesn't he have a mustache in that movie?
I don't know. Maybe they put one on him and it looks terrible.
He's looked good with a mustache before.
He should have a mustache
Right?
in that movie. Yeah.
Watching it, that performance needs a mustache.
Yes,
Maybe.
it
Do you think
does.
it's
It's my biggest
just
criticism
because,
of the film.
Well, do you think it's just because then it's too Poirot-y? Like it's like, what's Poirot famous for? The stash.
Maybe you could give him a different mustache.
Sure.
I'd settle for a beard or a goatee, a Van Dyke.
But you remember how, like, obviously Poirot, he's got the mustache,
Yes.
and then like Finney, when he does it, he's got the little mustache,
Very
net.
curled,
right?
yeah.
And then so Branagh was like, rather than scale back, we're scaling up.
Two
Like my
mustaches.
mustache is right. It's exactly
a double layer mustache.
Yes. So maybe they saw that and were like, no, we can't top that.
My
Right,
biggest complaint with Knives Out is I'm watching and I'm like, that is Daniel
Here are
Craig.
some-
He needs a mustache.
here are
I
some-
need to have that face a little hidden.
Here are some beloved facts.
Okay, beloved
Lauryn
facts.
Hill was the original choice to play Beloved.
Interesting.
And had to drop out because she was pregnant. Lauryn Hill, often pregnant,
Yeah.
obviously had several children.
That
in
would
this
be
time.
that would have been
And
a
this
really
is sort of
interesting take.
It would have been. She's great in like the few movies that
Yeah.
she's in.
Yeah, she is.
And this is sort of the end of Lauryn Hill as like major star before
is when
she
she sort of
begins her sort of
disappears.
public
Yeah.
recluse kind
Yeah.
of right.
yeah.
Let's see.
Right. This was right at the time where she was at the top of the world
Yeah.
before she sort of pulls away. from it.
Sister Act 2.
Great performance.
She's great in Sister Act
Yeah.
2. Is Sister Act 2 better than Sister Act 1?
I
Is
think
that one of those?
I think they're different movies.
They're different movies.
I've only ever
yeah,
seen
just
two.
like different tones.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Rachel Portman did 2 scores for the film, and one of them was entirely thrown out.
Wow.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have a lot here. That's
Yeah.
actually all the trivia I found. All right, fine. Tak Fujimoto shot it, of course.
Yeah.
Demi's the usual guy. Gary Goetzman. I don't know. It came out in October. It made a little bit of money, got an Oscar nomination, and that was that.
It is
Yeah.
kind
And
of crazy.
Oprah ate a lot of mac and cheese and felt really bad.
Right. She said, I mean, we'll get to the box house.
She said that I've never had a child, and this is the closest thing I have
Right.
to a child.
and that she ate
Which
40
is a
pounds
wild
of
thing
mac
to
and
say
cheese.
about a movie that
Yeah.
I feel like now the perspective on Beloved is like, it's not a bad movie. It's an interesting artifact of its time.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a noble failure, perhaps, right? You know,
Yeah.
like, it's not like you watch it and you're like, oh my God, what a train wreck. You know,
Right.
like, it's more just sort of like, oh, I can see why this didn't work. I can see
But you
things about
also,
it that
you
are
never
interesting.
hear anyone ardently defending it.
No, but it's not like, it's like, people don't roll their eyes and go, oh, it was an Oprah vanity thing.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Sucked.
Not
Like,
at
it
all.
doesn't have that
Yeah.
tag.
And I don't really think her choices were really driven by vanity
No.
either.
No. Uh-huh.
No, I think she just didn't know how to make something small at this point. And
Yeah.
I think she wanted Toni Morrison to have an adaptation that big.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think there was a certain nobility in her saying this needs to be a major film. This needs to be a major studio picture.
Yeah.
But then you watch the movie and like the second shot in it is a dog being slammed against a wall and its eyeball
the
falling out of its
first few
socket.
minutes, right, with the eyeball,
Yeah.
the sort of the milking
Yeah.
flashback is almost immediate.
Yeah, I mean,
some of the most intense stuff is very early.
The first 30 minutes, you're like, this
the
is
sort
a
of
movie.
gushing pee scene.
Yeah.
Remember that?
This is the Silence of the Lambs filmmaker. Like, this is him making the same sort of visceral horror. Yeah.
And then I love bugs on a person. I love that trick.
Uh-huh.
You know, in Candyman, great movie.
Uh-huh.
When he has all the bees on him, those are
Yeah.
just bees. Like, you can't fake that.
Yeah.
Maybe now you could, but back then you couldn't. So he just has fucking bees on him.
What's the 2000 horror movie where the bugs keep on landing on the woman's eye?
Bugs keep on landing.
That's
on the
something
woman's-
from, like,
I mean, sounds
A horror
horrible.
movie I'm forgetting.
Mm.
I
That's
think
how
you
you
just
know
like
she's
have to
evil.
put sugar all over
The
yourself.
bug lands
and
on
then
her
the bug-
eye and she doesn't blink or whatever. I don't
Ugh.
know. Yeah.
Ugh.
It's from something.
But yeah, it does settle down after that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that becomes mostly about two people in a house.
Two people in a
reckoning with
house.
their past.
But then there's the very long flashback sequence with the.
Lisa Gay Hamilton.
No. Well, yeah. Well, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Lisa Gay Hamilton is young beloved, but the
Is-
white
is
woman,
young,
Denver,
is not young beloved.
I mean,
is
young-
playing
young
young
Seth-
Sethi.
Seth-
Yeah.
she's good actually.
She is,
And
yeah.
and
Only 10 years younger than Oprah. It's kind of a choice
Mm.
to have someone play that character. Like, you compare this to The Irishman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're like, no, it has to be the same person playing every age. Technology be damned.
I love that it's Lisa Gay Hamilton.
I do too.
And I also think that she looks close enough to Oprah
Yeah.
where it
Yeah.
makes sense.
It's just funny that, that even, if the character's 10 years younger, you cast a different person.
I miss that. Bring that back.
Yeah. I like having multiple actors play the same character.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I mean, it's great in Moonlight. I don't.
Yeah, it fucking
I
rules.
agree. This is the whole thing. I don't mind The Irishman. Do your thing. It's fine. Like, give
Yeah.
it a shot. But like, I agree. It's like we are all used to the cinematic convention of like, I understand that this is younger X.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been done for 100 years. We're used to it.
And I also
Yeah.
understand
works.
that if you put a shitty wig on Robert De Niro, I'll go, okay, I get it. He's 50 now. If you want him to play the 50-year-old version.
But if you want to see him beat the shit out of someone on a curb, maybe you want to hire a young guy.
Yeah.
That everyone's
I
been
kinda
talking
love that
about
scene.
that. No, I mean I love the movie, but I also saw it like drunk at Alamo Drafthouse, where where I've watched movies in the middle of the night, and it was just like. I mean, it was so great, but I feel like if I was watching it at home in a Netflix environment where I could pause, then I would have noticed. So now I kind of want to go home and look
I'm
at
going to
it.
rewatch it on
Because
Netflix.
people
I
have
wanna
been
see how
talking about that
goes.
scene, and I don't remember it being
When I
what
watched it in
everyone
the theater, I was
describes
like,
it as.
he's kicking the shit out of the guy. It scares
Yeah.
his daughter. I
Right.
get it.
Yeah.
And then people post the gif and I'm like, yeah, okay, I see that he's like, a mile off the guy's face when he kicks him. But whatever.
But I think that also
James Caan punches the guy in The Godfather and misses him.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to the immersion of watching something in a theater where you're like so involved in the story that by the moment a scene like that happens, you are caught up in the context of the thing and you're not as focused on the details. Whereas if you're watching it on Netflix and it's a 3.5-hour movie and you're probably checking your phone a bunch and taking breaks and watching with other people or talking or whatever it is, by the time that scene comes up, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Those are not the shoulders of a 30-year-old man.
Yeah.
But, yeah, which flashback were you talking about, David?
The kicking.
kicking. He's kicking outside the
kicks the
grocery
guy.
store.
No. The in Beloved.
The Lisa Gay Hamilton
Yeah,
flashback.
Amy
The
Denver.
extended-
Amy Denver,
Right.
the white woman who saves
Yes.
her.
Oh,
that
man.
scene is long
Very
and
long.
crazy.
Okay. It's so weird. Out of all of the flashbacks to spend so much time on,
Yes.
the white woman one was
Yeah.
such the weirdest choice to
And
me.
it feels almost like a dream. You're like, who is this character?
Yes.
I know it's in the book. I know that's why she's
it was
called
just like
Denver.
a weird, and this character is so like big and like she was making me think of Amy Poehler, like
Yeah.
Amy.
It's a bizarre performance.
Yeah, and then
It's
she's like,
Ethan-
I've got a boat over here. Like, come over here. You know,
But
like
it's like, yes, all that things happen, but like in terms of like the things that we need to know about Sethi, that
is that right?
It's
That's
odd.
not the traumatic part. Is
No.
when she met
Right.
a wild white lady who had a boat.
and
Right.
it's like, I mean, that's how Denver was named, but that's something that you mentioned in a book. Like it makes sense in the book, but in the movie,
It's
really
not like anyone in the
doesn't.
movie is like, but why is she called Denver?
And
Like,
also,
you know.
right, and it's also just like the milk. Like what's interesting reading the book is that the build up to finding out about her milk getting taken and her being like assaulted, there's a lot of build up to it. When she reveals it, she's very upset. The aftermath of it is really huge. Like that's a big reveal. And in the movie, it's just like this weird, bizarre flashback. And it's like, no, this was an assault and this needs time.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
feel so much more stylized than the present
Yeah, I
tense
do not
version
like the
scenes from the movie. I
stylization.
don't
Oh, yeah, no, I
And then
I do
there's
not
that
like the
scene
style.
where like Wes Bentley and Jude Chickachella
Yeah.
are looking on
Yeah.
in horror at her having murdered her child.
Yeah.
That mostly focuses on their faces.
Yeah,
I
I-
also think that scene is sort of strangely calibrated.
I don't
I
like
do
that
too.
scene.
I think they're all strangely calibrated.
Yeah.
All the performances are
And there's
weird.
also
Yeah.
we haven't talked at all about Hill Harper, who was kind of like a big deal in the 90s and really is not a big deal anymore. But Hill Harper plays Hallie, plays her ex, the one who
Sure.
deserts her.
Yes.
And I honestly feel like there should have been more time with Hill
There's
Harper.
very
Yeah.
little of that.
And
right.
that's the thing. In the book, there's like you learn about their entire courtship, and then basically, like, I mean, the movie says this, but like he goes crazy because he sees this terrible thing happen to her, and part of it is because he realizes he cannot protect her, and so that's a whole thing. It's like, oh, I cannot protect this woman. How can I build a life with her if I can't protect her from these
Right.
white people, if I can't give her a home, if I can't make her feel safe? Like that's a whole thing. And I think so much of Sethi's trauma is like tied up in that I just think that it deserved more time, and there need to be less time with kind of like the sensationalism of it.
Well, and they treat it sort of just like a plot twist without ever giving you any sense of who he was as a guy.
Yeah, he was like a great guy, like the way
Yeah.
that she loved him very much, and like he deserts her. I mean, she's angry and she has a right to be angry, but he deserts her because he realizes how powerless he is as a black man and how he cannot be the kind of husband that he wants to be for her. And I think that Hill Harper could have done that work if they would have given him space to do that work.
Right.
It's also that thing of like, if you show him at his best, if you have any scenes of him and young Setha where you understand their relationship,
Right.
his absence will mean more to the audience
Yes,
than just
exactly.
having him exist as a name that's mentioned with sort of resentment. You know, you want
Yeah.
to be able to like dramatize why he was important.
Yeah.
It's also wild that the first scene of the movie is her son's running away.
Yeah.
Because it's so disorienting to have that be the first thing in the movie. Is that the first thing in the book? I don't remember that being the absolute first thing. It's early.
It's early. She mentions it, but the son's moving away isn't like a super.
It's not a big deal.
important
It's
thing.
true.
No.
Like when
Yeah.
Danny Glover shows up, he's like, I get it. You know,
Right. Yeah, you're
gotta
living
move
in a
on
fucking
sometimes.
haunted house.
And also you live in a haunted house,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
scary. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the son's moving away was a weird way to start it.
The opening is just very disorienting,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps intentionally, and the rest of the movie is not.
No.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie is much more ruminative
Yeah.
and like exposition is sort of given out. And,
Mhm.
you know, Albert Hall shows up. He's good. Unfolds the little newspaper. You know, I like those scenes. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything else I like the ghost stuff the best just because I like ghost stuff.
The
I
ghost
just-
stuff is
yeah.
good. There should have been more ghost
And
stuff.
it's the
Yes.
stuff that feels the most cinematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's most unique to this work being translated into this medium.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's play the box office game.
Okay, now I know what beat it because when Oprah tells her story about how depressed she was.
You don't know. You don't know. I know. I think you know.
Oh, was that not number one?
No, it
Okay,
was
because
not.
her anecdote was she said, I just remember that weekend when it came out being told you're getting beaten by something called Chucky.
Yeah.
And I was so depressed and ate 40 pounds of mac and cheese.
30 pounds.
Sorry.
Is the
But you're telling me The Bride of Chucky was not number one at the box office?
It was number 2.
Okay.
Bride of Chucky opened that week to $11 million.
Okay.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, good film.
John Waters is in it.
He's in 2 Chucky films. He's also in.
He's in Seed
Seed
or
of Chucky.
Yeah,
one-
it's a
one-
fun movie.
that movie came out and made $11 million. We're gonna guess the top 5 of the Griffin's creep who knows the box office from every
Yeah,
single weekend.
I like to creep on those box office charts.
So
Okay.
Beloved opened at number 5. It's at number 5. It opened to $8 million
Okay.
in mid-October.
Crazy.
It ended up at 22.
And Demi
sort of
says,
a regular performance.
Demi and Oprah say that the claim was the film was not connecting. Disney had The Waterboy, which was coming out, was tracking very big, so they wanted to hand over screens.
Yes.
And what they promised Oprah and Demi was that they were going to take the movie out of theaters primarily, and then when they expected that the Oscar nominations would come in, they would re-release it.
Which they did do, but much smaller than probably
Right, so they
anticipated.
re-released it in March after it had only gotten 1 nomination, which was Best Costumes, and it did an additional like $300,000 at number 12 at the box office, and then was done.
But opening weekend 5.
Okay.
And Bride of Chucky, indeed, number 2.
Number
a new
2.
comic take on the Chucky universe.
It was beaten by Chucky, just not in first position.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
But number 1,
I just like her saying something called Chucky.
number 1 is a movie that I really like.
Ooh.
Based on a book. It's a new movie this week.
Okay.
2 actresses.
What did it do this weekend?
13.
13. It's not a huge weekend.
It's October, mid-October. It's not like a hot time. It is a spooky movie, sort of.
But it's not a horror film.
Horror is too strong,
Okay.
I would say. Spooky.
But spooky.
It made $46 million in America eventually.
Okay.
Based on a book. 2 female stars.
Is it practical magic?
It's practical magic.
It's practical magic.
What do we think of practical magic?
Never seen it.
Rude.
I know you love it.
It's a wine.
Yes.
Let's bring the girls in.
It's a
movie.
Nancy Myers movie, except it's
Yeah,
about 2 women who
magic.
can't stop killing and resurrecting their boyfriend.
Well, I've always said Griffin Dunn is the wino Nancy Myers.
Genuinely, like both of them are basically like, I just keep either killing or resurrecting my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And, these dark forces that I'm allied with are really fucking up my plan to raise a kid and live in a nice house.
Sounds pretty impractical to me.
So good.
So practical magic.
Okay, number 1.
With,
Chucky number 2.
with Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman more in like sort of her like, sort of sultry phase, like 90s Nicole Kidman, right? Number 3 is an animated film.
Okay.
I'm just giving you that to see if you...
Ants?
Yes. I figured that's all you needed.
Yeah.
Ants.
Man, that soundtrack was burning up my Discman at that point.
What's
in
on
time.
the soundtrack?
The
of
score
Ants?
for Ants. Listen to it all
and
the
who
time.
composed the score for Ants, Braytel?
Ooh, great question.
That's a movie that I have trouble rewatching as an adult.
I do too.
Is there anything up with that? Wait,
Yeah.
is there anyone weird involved with it or anything like that?
I mean, it's also just like a very sexual movie once you realize, like, once you're an adult and you realize what everybody's talking about and specifically who is talking. And then it's just like, kids watch?
I will say this.
So insane that kids watch
I
that
think it's
movie.
a well-written film, written by Chris Weitz and Paul Weitz.
Yes.
It is very bizarre. Katzenberg was famously on one in the 90s about
Trying
like...
to fuck Pixar, right?
Right. Like when Pixar came in with Toy Story and he was like, oh my God, here's a new animation studio that doesn't have the reputation that Disney does. He was like, I want to make a very adult animated film. And he almost fucked up Toy Story and then they backed off and reclaimed control over it. So then when he goes over to DreamWorks, Ants feels like him being like, see, this is what I was trying to make the whole time. And everyone's like, okay. It also looks terrible.
It looks real cruddy.
They
which is
rushed
part
it.
CGI, obviously.
They wanted to beat A Bug's Life even though they started animation a year after Bug's Life.
And now A Bug's Life isn't even really that well regarded. So all that
No, it's
effort-
crazy. Although Bug's Life
Griffin loves it.
slaps.
yeah.
But yes, Ants is very weird. Number 3 at the box office. Okay.
Who are the composers? 2.
Henry Gregson Williams?
Well, Harry. He goes by
Harry,
Harry.
sorry,
Sure,
okay.
but yes.
That's one of the 2?
Yeah.
Fuck. I mean, give me some credit for getting one of the 2.
It's good job.
The second one, more or less of a name.
Similar?
It's not David Newman.
No, but that vibe.
It's not David Denby.
No, not
That name?
David. Just like a David Newman type. He's still working. He's a guy. He's like a replacement level composer.
He's a replacement level composer.
You know what I mean? And not to be rude to him, I've actually liked some scores he's done.
Has he ever gotten an Oscar nomination?
That I'm going to have to look up. Once. For his best score. And then another animated score.
It's another animated score.
Yes.
And it's not a Disney or a Pixar, I would imagine.
DreamWorks. Much like this.
It's a DreamWorks. Was it Prince of Egypt?
No. This is taking too long. It's John Powell.
Oh, okay.
I was like, this is actually not that interesting.
Yeah, it's not that interesting.
It's John Powell. He did the How to Train Your Dragon score with all the bagpipes and
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, love How
It's
to
a
Train
nice
Your
score.
Dragon.
That's a good score. That's the thing everyone loves in that movie, right?
Yes.
People love that score? Yeah.
Yeah, you're a total freak. Anyway, Woody Allen's the star of the movie. It's fucking insane.
Yep, very bizarre.
And but also Sylvester Stallone, Jennifer Lopez, Gene Hackman. It has like a completely
Christopher
stacked cast.
Walken,
Yeah,
Anne
yeah.
Bancroft,
Crazy.
Sharon Stone. Everyone's like playing
It's about
that.
ants.
So weird. So
And
weird.
Danny
so
Glover.
weird. Danny Glover.
And I remember the scene where he has to become like a soldier ant,
Yeah.
and they have to go fight the termites, and the termites are like 10 times bigger than them.
Yes.
And I was like, this is wild. Like, this is kind of grim.
Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin play wasps.
Yeah.
But the joke is that they're wasps and also they're wasps.
They're like wasps.
yes, you sing. Yes.
Which is
It's a pretty good choice.
I remember they
actually.
eventually get like stomped by a sneaker. It's really weird.
The script's pretty good.
Number 4
Okay.
is a big comedy, huge comedy of the year, action comedy.
Rush Hour? Yeah.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
Rush Hour.
Running the
Jackie
table.
Chan, Chris Tucker, Tom Wilkinson.
Of course.
I don't remember who
How
else
do
is in Rush
you
Hour.
know these so
Oh, they're
quickly?
sick and disgusting. He's a terrible person. Go right to jail.
Yeah.
No, he can tell you how he knows. It's actually cute.
Well, yeah. My dad loves sports scores. Read them with my brother. I didn't like sports. The equivalent became me and my father reading the box office together every Monday morning before I went to school.
That's so
It's
cute.
very burned in my memory because their emotional connection. And it's not mostly what my father and I talk about, but we're still constantly talking about the box office. Although David and I do that now as well. We spend an hour on
Texting about the Playmobil
Saturday
movie?
night texting about the box office performance of the Playmobil movie.
Oh my, yeah, that movie.
That movie.
Have you seen it?
I have not, have you?
No.
I kind of want to now, only because it's belly flopped so hard.
I don't know why they decided to make it, especially because like the second Lego movie didn't do well. Well, the second
Yes.
major
Right.
like
if you think of it
Lego
as the fourth
Batman.
Lego movie, it makes more sense.
Ninjago
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
do well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Only 2 of them did well.
Should have
Right.
stopped at Lego Batman. Lego Batman was great.
Lego Batman's a masterpiece.
Yes.
Thank you for your perfect opinions. But no, they announced this movie right after the first Lego movie got made.
Oh my
And the
God.
Playmobil movie has gone through like 6 directors and 27 writers and 4 release date shifts.
It's so funny because I didn't know what it was, and I moved in with my boyfriend, and he put like these like little figurines on the bookcase.
They're Playmobil?
And I took a picture of them, and I was just like, Kyle has Legos, and then somebody was just like, a bunch of people are gonna get very mad at you. That is
Wow.
Playmobil, and I was like, I don't know the difference. It's
Wow.
just
They're
toys.
little people.
Yeah.
Little people with faces.
Different faces, though.
I did not know that they were a thing until somebody on Twitter told me. So.
Mostly a European thing.
I never had Playmobil.
Oh, see, I had a ton of them, but I attribute
more
that to having a
European.
European mother.
A French mama. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kyle spent a lot of his time in the Netherlands, which maybe
I
explains
think
why he
that's
has
where
them.
they're from.
Yeah.
Here are some of the other movies. It's just a great 90s weekend.
Okay.
Practical Magic and Bride of Chucky
Yeah,
being
figurine 98.
Yeah.
famous. And Ants. All
Yeah.
of them. Rush Hour, everything.
Yeah.
What Dreams May Come.
Oh,
Robin Williams goes to heaven.
Oh, I've seen that
And
one.
it's like a big old gloop.
another
Lot of
big
gloops.
like passion project sort of
Yeah.
belly flop. Although it did better.
Yeah, it did
And Beloved.
okay. It's
Yeah.
a
It's-
really
it's
kind
not-
of a dreary movie.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
A Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah.
It's a whole movie. Those
mean-
guys from the sketch.
Yep. A movie
Yeah.
I loved. I would be scared to rewatch.
Who made it?
Well, the credited director is like someone, but the actual, I believe the story
Fortenberry.
now is that Amy Heckerling actually
right,
directed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen.
Yeah,
the
and all the
chatter
stuff
about that.
going
Yes.
on with that. Yeah.
Urban legend.
Ooh.
What if there was horror about those stories that you hear?
I love bad horror franchises, and I can't deal with urban legend at all.
It's below
It's
even
a
you,
little.
you're saying.
The
Yeah.
concept is just ungraspable. It's like it's kind of urban legend is kind of like Candyman in that it's like academic, right? It's like
Yeah.
she's a student and she's investigating these stories we tell.
Mm-hmm.
But Candyman is like she's investigating a specific folktale.
Right.
And urban legend is just like like the story of like there's a guy in the back seat. Like that. What if that was a horror guy who kills you?
The most
Like,
interesting thing about those movies is that Loretta Devine is in more than one of them.
Weird.
Urban Legends Final Cut. I'm trying to remember the other urban legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in the first one and she's in the second one.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then Ronin, sort
Oh,
of an
yeah.
underrated, fun, dumb,
Yeah,
but also dumb smart
Frankenheimer.
action movie, right?
Yeah.
And then Holy Man. Eddie
Holy
Murphy
man.
as a guru.
I've never watched that all the way through, and I
not a
also
great movie.
mix it up a lot with The Golden Child.
Mm.
Because
Sure, that's true. He's made sort of multiple special, like I'm the special one movies.
That felt like too, like he was on such an incredible comeback run because like the
Yeah,
first half
that's
of the
like
90s were not
post-Dr.
good for him,
Dolittle,
and then it
right.
was like Nutty Professor,
And-
Dr.
yeah,
Doolittle,
yeah.
Eddie's back. Oh
Right.
fuck, what's this?
And then he makes this movie with like the barcode
Yeah.
poster. Who's into this? Every 10 years, the Love Guru's another one where
Yeah.
they're like, let's do a guru movie. No one likes
Never
gurus.
works.
no.
Yeah.
Even if you're making fun of them.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're done.
Holy man.
We did the box office game.
Yeah.
We're done talking about Beloved.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's I think it's an interesting movie. That's
I
sort
think
of
it's
what
an
I can
okay
give it.
movie.
I think that there are fascinating things about it. There are good
Yeah.
performances in it, but it does not all the way come together.
I was sort of firing it up, not knowing quite but I was sort of like, who know this? I know there are people who value this movie. I've definitely heard people like sort of stick up for it, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe this is one of those kind of buried gem type movies, but not quite.
No.
No.
And you're like, probably the thing now would be for Oprah to get rights to
Yes, and
other
identify
Morrison works
like
from the
other
estate
filmmakers
and
yes.
hand them to people and do them on own as miniseries and
I
you know.
desperately want her to produce movies again, mostly because of the two-headed monster that is Lee Daniels and Tyler Perry driving me insane.
It must be Slade.
We need to throw a woman in there.
Yeah.
Yes, I would
Because
agree
I'm
with
just
that.
like, I'm tired. Also, did you see, I mentioned this, I think before we started recording, that Lee Daniels is doing the Terms of Endearment remake with Oprah. And I'm just
What?
like,
Yes.
why Lee Daniels of all
Now
people?
this-
Can someone please stop him?
Are they
This-
doing it for TV or
No,
theatrical?
it's
No, they're doing it
theatrical.
theatrical.
And
Now-
who's playing the daughter? Have they announced
The,
yet?
They
the
have
only
not
person
announced.
attached is Oprah. Like God
Wow,
knows,
I did
it
not
could
know
fall
this.
through. But he is currently he's filming a Billie Holiday movie that I believe is due out this year. I mean, this year when it's 2020.
Yeah. With who playing Billie Holiday?
Someone, Andra Day.
Oh yeah, she's like big in like kind of like theater music circles and stuff like that.
Well, so I'm assuming she's being chosen for her talent,
for her singing.
voice.
Yeah, she can sing.
But Trevante Rhodes is in it.
I love him.
Divine Joy Randolph is in it. I don't know. Natasha Lyonne is in it. Hey.
Yeah, Natasha Lyonne really getting around these days. Yeah.
So he's back. In
the
terms of
future
making
world.
movies.
Yeah.
But but he's been producing stuff. It's like him and Tyler Perry are like the big two, like they throw their weight behind something. It's going to happen. And then Oprah does it every once in a while, but it's almost like she's just like a little gun shy because of what happened with Beloved.
I think it might be.
Did she produce Selma? Was she like an executive producer on
She
that?
was.
Okay, yeah.
She was. And like in Selma, like that's the kind of stuff that I want from her.
Yes.
Selma is great. She's great in Selma.
And it's her finding a very, like, an indie director who's never made a movie of that scale, but is obviously talented.
Getting them into the studio system. Yes. You want her to sort of extend her power in that kind of way.
Right, because I think, like, in terms of, like, OWN has been really great in terms of getting a lot of, like, female filmmakers into direct episodes of Greenleaf and Queen Sugar, and it's just like, okay, like, put them on the big screen.
Right, you sort of have a farm team now who you should be able to...
I forgot the other movie she recently produced was The 100-Foot Journey.
Yes, I did. I did see that, and I was confused by that.
Was that a book club?
It was a book.
Okay.
So I assume she optioned it.
Yeah, wow.
But
she loves this book.
The only movies Harpo Films has produced, Beloved, Great Debaters, Precious, 100-Foot Journey, Selma.
And Precious was her and Lee Daniels coming on as producers after the movie was bought at Sundance.
I believe that's right.
That was the weird thing, was it was
back
like...
when it was Push.
Right. It was like the
Never
movie...
forget that movie had to change its title because of the superhero movie Push.
Starring Chris Evans.
Yes.
Everyone's third favorite Chris Evans superhero franchise.
But yeah, I came on, like, when I decided to come on to talk about this movie, I came on ready, guns blazing, Beloved, best movie ever, underrated.
I want to discover it.
And then I rewatched it, and I was just like, not quite, but I'm glad that we're talking about it.
Glad we're talking about it, and not if you want to revisit it, there's things to find in it.
There are.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on this episode, Jourdain.
Oh yeah.
People should listen to Bad Romance Pod. You and Bronwyn and Ariel Isaac, who's a great comedian.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, by the time this episode comes out, we'll have already done our live show because it's in January, but we're doing a live show where we're doing Love Actually. We're doing Love Actually at Union Hall.
Hell yeah.
I hope that you went, maybe?
A film that I presume, if you're covering it on the podcast, you have similar opinions to David and I.
Yes.
It's a toxic waste dump of a movie.
Yes, we feel the same way about it.
It's a psychological hellscape.
yes, very much so.
I despise that movie. But fun to bounce ideas off of that one. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
People should follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, what's your handle?
It's at JOURDAYEN.
There you go.
Because the proper spelling of my name has been taken since 2009.
No.
But maybe, aren't they going to free up some of those dead accounts?
I am waiting to get my name.
I saw that. I want to petition someone and be like, hey, who do I talk to get David Sims?
Because you're David L. Sims.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I've gotten used to it. It's my middle name.
But follow me on Twitter. There's a picture of me when I'm 3 years old. Yes, I got glasses when I was 3 years old.
Nice.
You can see that. It's very cute.
And you're writing all over the place.
Yeah. I'm doing Steven Universe recaps at AV Club right now.
Nice.
Writing about, by the time this will be out, my Queen and Slim piece will be out, and I'm working on some other things. And the piece that I kept referencing about this decade in black film will be out by then.
Definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Very excited.
And
it's a new decade now.
Right now?
I mean, when this comes
by the
out.
time we'll be in
a new decade.
2020. Everything will be so clear to us.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Things will go great.
Yeah. I think it's going to be instantaneous. I think the ball will drop and everyone will go, oh,
what's all this money in my bank account?
This is how we should behave.
Right.
It all makes sense.
All right, wrap it up.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Andrew Guda for our social media, Lane Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit. Next week, talking truth about Charlie with David Lowery.
Hey, you fooled everyone.
I tricked you. He's back on the show to talk about that incredibly strange movie.
Very strange film.
And keep trucking with Demi.
Yeah, keep trucking with Demi.
Are we on to Toy Story commentaries by this point, or are we still in Star Wars? No, we're still in Star Wars.
Check out the Patreon.
We're talking wars, baby.
Yeah.
We're back in the wars.
Maybe we're going to Disney World soon.
I hope so.
Yeah.
God, we have to talk about this.
Great. All right.
Yeah.
End the episode.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank you all for listening. Yeah,
And as always, we got to talk about Disney World plans now. Okay, bye.
The best thing about that movie is that the girl who sings All I Want for Christmas Is You goes on to voice Marceline on Adventure Time.
Really?
And that was my introduction to her.
Marceline, the Vampire Queen.
Yeah.
Wow.
I met
stand.
her at Dragon Con and
Oh.
I fangirled out.
Wow. See, I'm a Princess Bubblegum guy myself.
Bossy
Yeah.
round face.
Bossy round face.
Yeah.
Good ruler. Tries
Good ruler.
tries
I
to
don't
be.
know about
Tries
that,
to be.
you guys.
Tries to be.
Okay.
Look, all of her citizens are candy.
She also,
She
We'll get
learns.
into this.
She learns.
And at one point, she turns back into a baby. She's got to contend with that.
I'll totally
just
come.
to regrow herself.
I'll come back to talk about Adventure Time.
Okay, let's do it.